OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, we're getting into our flow this morning. Owen is here.
Hey, Ger.
Nathan is here.
Good morning.
How are you, Nathan?
I'm very well. How are you?
The Liverpool reaction over the last week has been, Virgil van Dijk, greatest defender of all time, 60 not out, what a record. Fabinho, this team is even better than the team that won the league and the team that won the Champions League. They were smelling themselves, as somebody said in the show yesterday or the day before. I was like, that was an interesting turn of phrase. I must steal that. They were smelling themselves a bit, and then that's what happens. You get caught last night like they did. Were they lucky to get through? Or on balance, actually, were the chances they missed about even? What happened last night?
I think the chances they missed were about even. They probably were smelling themselves a little bit. They did seem to be a little bit casual in how they approached the game. They obviously had a 2-0 lead from the first leg, and there is still a bit with Liverpool when they're not all at it that they can be exposed a little bit more easily. But again, they created any amount of chances. They hit the woodwork 3 times. Mo Salah hit the post twice. They had 3 or 4 other gilt-edged chances to score in that game, which would have killed it off straight away. It would have been an interesting night if Alexis Sanchez hadn't been sent off within a couple of minutes of Lautaro Martinez scoring this absolute wonder goal. Then we might have had a fascinating final half an hour. But Liverpool weren't at their very best. Sometimes you got to scrape through. If they play like that against Manchester City, Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern Munich in the knockout stage, they'll get beaten, they'll get knocked out. But you would expect, even Anfield, it wasn't one of those great European nights at Anfield. It never felt like one of those great European nights at Anfield. It felt as though people around the ground thought the job was done, that there was maybe that general disrespect that's there for Serie A at the moment, that they weren't expecting Inter Milan to come and pull off one of the great European comebacks. They thought that they were thinking about the quarter-final draw and who Liverpool are going to get in it, and that seemed to feed down into the players a little bit as well. But I would agree that I think Liverpool's squad right now is the strongest squad that Jurgen Klopp has had since he arrived at the club. The depth that he has, when you look at the Carabao Cup final and Joe Gomez, who was such a instrumental part of the championship winning side, didn't even make the squad that day despite being fully fit. Harvey Elliott wasn't in it initially. There is suddenly quite a lot of options for Jurgen Klopp.
Obviously, when you look at the scoreboard and having a 1-goal cushion, it kind of gives a sense that they scraped through. But I'm not sure that's the case. I think sometimes at the back, Liverpool, given obviously the high line that they play and given the way that they defend, it sort of gives off this mirage that the opposition team had a lot of opportunities, and they didn't. Even the goal that Inter Milan scored last night wasn't really a chance. I'd love to know what the XG was on Martinez's goal, because it's one of those that don't get scored, and people are criticising Van Dijk for standing off him a little bit. Dude's not going to score from there on the majority. He did, but these things happen in football sometimes, and I just think that there is this criticism of Liverpool of being quite open at the back recently, and I think that's fair enough. But I think that they are more than adept at being able to handle that.
What happens if somebody springs the offside trap in the Champions League final and it's like, well, it worked all season except in the biggest game, when a good team, a really truly great team, or when it's against Mbappe, who understands how the high line works, and do you know what I mean? It's it's grand against Danny Ings, but maybe when it comes to Kylian Mbappe, he won't be running offside as often. Yeah, well,
let's have that conversation then. But right now, I think it seems pretty fine. I don't think that there is any sort of issue at the back there. I think that.
Well, we've been having this conversation for years.
Yeah,
Liverpool play a high line and play it unbelievably well because they want to press high up the pitch. It relies on their front 3 players putting enormous pressure on the opposition's defence, so that every time they clear the ball, they can't pick out a long-range pass to a Kylian Mbappe or a Danny Ings, that all they end up doing is giving the ball back to Van Dijk or Matip or Konate on the halfway line, and Liverpool go again. That is why they play the high line. We know that. It's the way Jurgen Klopp wants them to press. There is a risk attached to it. And the one thing I do find is that it does give the other side a bit of momentum that maybe isn't really there. Again, as Owen says, we talk about chances. Often you see at half-time against Liverpool chances the opposition have created, but 3 or 4 of them might have been offside. So not really chances that were created.
Do they get counted in the chances stats? Or you mean you're watching the video back?
They don't.
Yeah,
and they're not, because if the linesman, part of the problem for Liverpool obviously is that the linesman waits and waits and waits. So it'll end up looking like a real opportunity. But The sense that Klopp should change and suddenly play it deeper and not go with enough, I think everything would fall apart.
Well, I'm not saying
that.
Yeah.
Like, and all I'm saying is that, like, it's just even in terms of like how you kind of like feel about watching Liverpool at the moment, as if is there any jeopardy? And it sometimes feels that the idea of jeopardy is just an idea, that actually what they're doing at the back, they are in control and they know exactly what they're doing.
Okay, and look, you can't take any micro trends from a couple of games recently where they've blitzed teams and looked really good and scored loads, and then there's been other games where they have looked a little bit lax, and for whatever reason that seems to be in the squad. I do wonder if they don't win this league, if they're going to regret that period of time where they allowed the gap to Man City to get so big, because Manchester City are going to buy a striker. We know that. We know that he has said it already. Maybe he leaves. Maybe that's the thing that evens this thing back up in the future, and Man City become a club who have less long-term strategic genius in charge. But like, that's, it's putting your hat on an event that won't happen. They definitely will buy a striker next season, and this was a year for this Liverpool team, who they keep telling us are better than the other teams that won the league and won the Champions League, to actually put it up to City more, like allowing City to get that lead. I remember having you on one Wednesday morning, maybe 2 or 3 months back, and you were like, well, this league is done. We always knew that Manchester City had it in them to do this. And I was like, well, Liverpool were a bit flaky to allow this to happen. And I still think Liverpool were a bit flaky, and I still think there's still a little bit of flakiness in the team when they're not quite sure what the identity is. Where are we the Thiago team, or are we the non-Thiago team? And it's horses for courses a little bit. So I don't know.
But they've lost twice all season, so they're not that flaky. Like, Manchester City are setting a standard over the last 3 or 4 years that nobody has done before in terms of the amount of points you need to go and win a title. So, yeah, Liverpool may well have regrets, and we don't know what happened behind the scenes with Jurgen Klopp. Did he get players he wanted during the summer? Like, look at the impact Luis Diaz has made already. If you have Luis Diaz in that Christmas period, which if they don't win the league will be the one that cost them, where they drop points in 3 straight games. If you have Luis Diaz there to come in as a fresh pair of legs, does that change things? Maybe it does. But they are going up against one of the all-time great sides, which makes it incredibly difficult, because you can't afford to slip up. And they've done really well over the last while to stick at it, to keep City under pressure, to put it in a situation where maybe when they go to the Etihad in a month's time, they will still have a chance of winning the title. But they're not the perfect side, but then neither are Manchester City.
Yeah, like
City don't have that number 9. Liverpool couldn't do much more, and I think they're pretty sure of their identity. Yeah, they're trying to have a second way of playing at times with Thiago, but even when Thiago's playing, it hasn't dramatically changed. It changes how they hold on to the ball a little bit more. And that's a change over 3 or 4 years, that they hold on to the ball better than they did. But I still think it's that high press, the intensity of the front three, setting the tone for everybody else.
Like, what's the identity? Like, when the story is told of this Manchester City team at the end of the season, if they win this league, what will the story of it be? Will it be the Bernardo Silva team, which it was at the start of the year,
a strikerless team,
or is it the Kevin De Bruyne team that it becomes now? Like, I mean, the identity of Liverpool is pretty easy to nail down. It's the Mo Salah team. They've got the best player in the world, and everything that they've done in the Premier League that's been good this season has been pinned on Mo Salah. I think it's unfair to suggest that the midfield, having been chopped and changed, it speaks to some sort of lack of identity in Liverpool, because you could look at Manchester City and the changes that they've made, and they've been quite similar, actually.
Well, I don't know if they've been similar. I think that them not having a striker means that they are a team of those forwards, whoever it is in whatever period of time is on the top of their game. Because you'd say De Bruyne, I would say Mahrez has been as good this season as anybody that they've had, and he's been consistently good. He's been second fiddle all the time, but he's been a consistent second fiddle, and world class at that level. So we are nitpicking here, obviously, but at the end of the season, what does success look like for Liverpool now? Having said that they are a better team, they have a better squad than they had before, they have to win another trophy, a bigger one than the one they've won.
Yeah, and there's no point in a decade's time when we're looking back at this and Liverpool reflecting on the Jurgen Klopp era and saying, weren't we just unlucky that Manchester City were there at the same time? They do need to win trophies to reflect how good they have been. A Champions League, a Premier League, a Carabao Cup is great, but is there even more greatness there? And if there is still a chance they go and win the Champions League this season, there is still a chance. I still have City as strong favourites to win the Premier League, but it's hard to see what more they can do without going and doing what Manchester City did last season, which is not sign a striker, but still spend 100 million on Jack Grealish, who he's got better over the last few weeks since he's come back from injury, but hasn't had a massive impact. And City have been able to afford spending £100 million on a player who hasn't transformed their team. Liverpool can't afford to do that.
Well, they could have. They chose not to. Their ownership chooses not to invest. Like their net spend. We know it's a strategic.
Their ownership is not a nation state, essentially.
No, but come on, neither is Manchester United, and they've managed to spend $1 billion over the last while. Like this whole kind of Liverpool couldn't afford to sign players. It's not true. They chose not to. Their ownership chose not to. Whoever's making the argument to John W. Henry did not win that argument. Like that's the case of that. It's not like we couldn't have signed Grealish. They could have signed Grealish if they wanted 100 million. They could go and sign Kylian Mbappe. They could go and sign anybody in world football. They are rich enough to be able to do that and to absorb that. We've seen they spent the money on Alisson. We've seen they spent the money on whoever in the past, Van Dijk and Salah at the time. Like they've got plenty of money. They choose not to spend it.
Yeah, and I know the argument that always comes back from Liverpool supporters is that the Alisson Van Dijk came from the Coutinho sale, so that they've never had a track record of spending that sort of money. But I've made the point before that Liverpool won the league not because of signing Salah or Mane and improving the Klopp got. They won the league because they signed the two best players in the world in their position, arguably, in Alisson and Virgil van Dijk. And are they willing to go and do that again in a different position? So are they in the mix for Erling Haaland? It doesn't seem so. Are they in the mix for Kylian Mbappe? It doesn't seem so. So if Jurgen Klopp, he would be well within his rights to be throwing his toys out of the pram, saying, look what I have done. I have brought your club back. Why aren't you giving me these players? Look what happened when you spent 70 million on Virgil van Dijk or on Alisson. I made them even better again. I brought a Champions League, a Premier League title. Give me the money. But from the outside, that doesn't seem to be how Klopp approaches things. He seems happy to bring in a Luis Diaz and make him better. Albeit we're working off 4 or 5 games. But again, bringing him in for not 80, 90 million, not the finished article, and making him better over 2 or 3 years, and enjoys that challenge. But it does mean that when it comes down to a Premier League title race, it'll get to 90 points. That's where your Kylian Mbappe can come in quite handy.
Still £40 million, they shelled out on him. It's not a huge degree of moneyballing it. I think they were pretty certain that this thing was going to be a home run almost. Like, and they did sign Konate last summer as well, which was one of the issues that they had last season, was where's the depth at centre back when the injuries happened. So there was a bit of remedial action. I'm not sure if in hindsight, that they'd look back on some of the business they've done over the last 12 months and say, God, we really regret it, because they win their game in hand. They're 3 points off Manchester City, and Manchester City, as we've already discussed, have been heralded as sleepwalking through the league and still winning it at a canter.
Okay, we'll come back to this a little bit later on. If you've got a view on it, you can leave a comment in the YouTube stream, youtube.com/offtheball. Remember to hit subscribe on the YouTube button. So Roddy Collins is going to join us at 8 o'clock to talk about the richest five-a-side football tournament in the world. Maybe not, but it's definitely one of them anyway. Fiona Hayes is going to join us to talk to rugby. Johnny Sexton's new deal is up for discussion at 8:10. Rassie Watch at 8:30. So we'll get the view from South Africa about Rassie saying he didn't leak the video. Definitely did not leak the video. It wasn't me. Well, sure, how did I benefit from it? Except from putting massive amounts of pressure on the referee in the second test, which all came home to bear. John Duggan at 8:40 with this week's version of Virtual Insanity. We're talking to the Irish people who have set up a gym in Palestine. Graham Hunter at 9:10, and we'll bring some Brian Driscoll goodness at 9:30 this morning. But at 7:44, this is OTB AM, and OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. A very interesting stuff from Rory Mcilroy in the press conference yesterday, which I saw in one of the papers. It might actually have been The Sun, where he was talking about he would like there to be some transparency when it comes to disciplinary matters in golf, for suspensions to be announced. It's like, are there any suspensions in the past that haven't been announced? I mean, there was certainly wild speculation about some of the best golfers in the world being suspended for various issues, which never have come to light officially, because the PGA Tour doesn't believe that justice done in private is justice denied. They think that it's fine. It's our tour. We can do what we want, which was basically what Phil Mickelson was saying. So there's a suggestion that Phil Mickelson will be suspended or has been suspended. We don't know, and we're not sure what the crack is.
No, and golf has changed its rules around suspensions. So up until 2017, recreational drug suspensions were never made public. So you could just disappear for 3 months or 6 months and maybe take some private time for yourself, and nobody would ever know why. They have changed that, but there haven't been any high-profile players ever named. And Phil Mickelson, I'm sure, has violated some codes of the PGA Tour by trying to break up the entire PGA Tour. In his statement said he was taking some time away from the game of golf, which immediately raised alarm bells of, you're taking time away or you're being told to take time away. But even what Phil Mickelson has done in trying to destroy all the work of the PGA Tour over many decades, the PGA Tour and Jay Monahan, the commissioner, is not willing to come out publicly and say, yes, do you know what? Trying to wreck the job that I've done, that gets you a 6-month ban. That's a 6-month ban right there. Don't come back. He's going to miss the players. 20 million quid on offer at the players this week. Going to miss that. Going to miss the PGA. Still on for the career Grand Slam. No, he's not going to the US Open. Not going to defend his PGA title. That's the punishment that you get. That is what happens if you screw with the PGA Tour. No, for some reason, the PGA Tour has still decided, we're never going to tell you.
And they're making a point of saying this is a private matter. If there is ongoing, or if there's future disciplinary action, I'm not going to tell you about it. McIlroy's like, that's nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. Tell everybody.
Well, McIlroy is the head of the Players Committee, and in the press conference yesterday basically said that they need to be more transparent. Like McIlroy 3-4 years ago was talking about the drug side of it and how, you know, a player could be taking human growth hormone and nobody would ever know about this. It could be banned for it, and the other competitors wouldn't have ever been told about it, which you can understand has been one of the best players in the world. If one of your contemporaries
suddenly came back
things that, and
looking
you don't know
huge.
about it.
Yeah.
So, and you know, Phil Mickelson isn't the only golfer in the world who hasn't played a golf tournament in quite a while and who isn't playing at the Players' Championship this week. There's a lot of players who take time away, who have little injuries. And again, it raises a doubt on everybody. That is the part of the problem here. Actually, it does raise a doubt that if a player ends up having a sort of specific 3-month or 6-month absence, suddenly everybody raises a few eyebrows. So McIlroy is saying that as part of his work in the Players Advisory Council, that they are going to be lobbying the PGA Tour Board to change this, to have a bit more transparency.
We should hasten that.
Transparency in golf, eh?
Yeah, Jay Monahan has said that he hasn't had any conversations with Mickelson, and so therefore this, you know, he stepped away of his own accord, is what Jay Monahan said. Which isn't we didn't suspend him, because, you know, I emailed him to tell him he's suspended, as opposed to we had a conversation about it. But he needs Phil to be contrite. The ball is in his court. I would welcome a phone call from him. Listen, he's a player that's won 45 times on the tour. He's inspired a lot of people and helped grow this tour, his tour. So as difficult as it is to read some of the things that were said, ultimately a conversation will be had when he's ready, and I will be ready.
Well, Jay Monahan was like the cat who got the cream at the press conference yesterday. It was his victory tour. They have seen off, for now, the challenge of the Saudi Golf League, and he's going to enjoy every minute of it.
Can I ask you, just on that, right? Did Mickelson blow the whole thing up because of what he said? So if that hadn't happened, would everybody have actually been happy enough to go and take the money?
Absolutely. That line that keeps coming up of he said the quiet part out loud.
Has it, or was there a possibility they'd already lost and that, or they'd already won, in that they were using this to get more money, and stuff like the PIP was a step in the right direction, and that actually they were getting more power? Like I'm just, from the distance of the gory details were obviously so sensational of what Mickelson was saying. Like, strategically, did he, you know, is he as thick as everybody's making out to be? Like, or actually, had he already won the bit that he wanted to win? We were never going to go with them anyway. Seemed to be the undercurrent and the vibe of like, well, we know they killed Khashoggi, so actually they were just doing it to wedge a more power for themselves, and they seem to get some stuff from the PGA Tour.
Well, I think there were two different sides to this. One was the quiet, soft leverage that was being used by Rory Mcilroy and the young players on the PGA Tour. They never committed. They never said anything positive about the rival tours, but were constantly in Jay Monahan's ear and getting increases, vast increases While on the other side, you had the slightly older cohort led by Phil Mickelson, and he brought some of the younger players in, it seems like Bryson DeChambeau, Dustin Johnson, Jason Kokrak, but also Lee Westwood, Ian Poulter, players in their 40s who'd be big names, but aren't that competitive. And they were the players who it seemed were most attracted to this, because they're not realistically going to be competing for major titles on a regular basis. They're not going to be winning 20 million a year, but here they've been offered 30, 40, 50 million straight up. So they were the ones who were most interested. Now, could you have a sustainable tour based on those players? That was the biggest issue here, that you could, because it was Saudi money. So they didn't need to make any money out of this. They didn't need $1 billion deal like the PGA Tour had. All they needed was recognizable names, Phil Mickelson going around the world shilling for them. So that's all they needed out of this. But the real power broker and the one who comes out best is McIlroy and that younger generation, because Jay Monahan said yesterday almost all the best young players in the world are under the age of 30. All of them have committed to their future. And this week is the prime example of that sort of soft leveraging that they have used. The prize fund this week is absolutely insane. 20 million quid prize fund. The winner this week, $3.6 million. It is the highest ever winner's check that's going to be handed out in the history of golf. And that has come not because the PGA Tour have suddenly decided we have $1 billion deal. It's come because of the rivalries that are there and what they've been pushed into.
Yeah, and the money from Saudi has actually helped the PGA Tour.
Absolutely.
Like that, there's no ifs, ands or buts about it. I do want to move on and talk about the tennis, because people will remember Alexander Zverev, who absolutely whacked a racket off the umpire's chair, missing the umpire's foot by a hair's breadth, by the width of a tennis ball. And you think, okay, well, he's going to face a long ban for this, right? You walk over to the umpire's chair and you bang the chair he's sitting on with no regard for whether or not you're going to hit him or not. It's like a complete fluke that you don't hit him because you are lashing out in anger. This isn't one of your perfectly controlled topspins down the line. This is a smash, and the racket could have done significant damage. I'm not saying it would have broken his foot or anything, but we might be talking about ligaments. It could have been physical injury. So you would expect, because the respect for referees is like written into the core of the values of all the sports bullshit about the core values being respect for referees. Well, give respect, get respect. So do you know? Do you both know what the suspension he got? Do you know what the answer is? Nathan, have you read this?
I haven't read this. I'm going to say a month.
Yesterday's punishment: an 8-week ban and a fine of $25,000. Suspended for 12 months. So nothing. It's a suspended sentence. It's like, I'm free to go. Thanks very much. 25 grand. I spit 25 grand. So that's it. Nothing. A little bit of money for the multimillionaire tennis player for lashing out and hitting the umpire's chair. Tennis is screwed.
Why?
You can't do this. You can't do this.
Clearly you can.
They've got no control. There's an ongoing investigation into allegations, very serious allegations of domestic abuse against Alexander Zverev. Now, they have seemed to be soft on him when it comes to disciplinary matters, where he has attacked the chair of the umpire. And this isn't like, around the bottom of the chair. It was like right there where he was sitting. You can see on the video, the super slow-mo is what you need to make sure that he didn't actually hit him.
It's almost they've taken the difficult PR move here, in a way. It would have been such an easy win for tennis authorities to be like
6 months,
6 months, and actually uphold the ban. So it's a strange one, isn't it?
Well, is it again like golf, where it's an individual sport, and while they may not own the tour, the players essentially run the tour, and that there is a leniency there because other players, and he is one of the best in the world, but even more senior players look at these examples and say, no, like he's one of our guys. He is one of our when you're on this tour, we protect our own.
Yeah, well, and eventually all that kind of stuff comes home to roost because people don't like it. People don't like when nasty people reveal their characters to you. It's not a good look. Serena Williams said there's absolutely a double standard. I would probably be in jail if I did that. And you remember, like, Serena, obviously not perfect, had her issues, but certainly would have been punished more significantly than what Zverev has been done here. Absolute nonsense from the tennis authorities. Like,
Well, it was the aggression. It was when you watched it first, you thought we've all seen players have a go at umpires through the years, Serena Williams included, and it was more the verbal abuse that was the problem. But here, you did worry for the umpire that was in a isolated position, high up in that chair, that actually Zverev was going to do something incredibly stupid. So to get a suspended sentence, like maybe it's in the protocol, set down, a first offence, all that sort of stuff, that this is how you get away with it. But I do feel in the individual sports, they are often an awful lot softer in terms of their punishments.
Apparently the ATP rulebook allows for an immediate suspension of between 21 days and 1 year. So it's not like that they've been hamstrung by what's been available to them.
No.
We've got Pam Shriver coming out saying, name another sport that wouldn't protect its officials who've been physically attacked and intimidated by a competitor by serving a probation versus a suspension. What am I missing? I dare say there's a lot of other sports who might have done something similar. Maybe
I mean,
this is screwed, but I think
maybe a sport who does punish people for attacking an official.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. Jim Conley would say he got hung out to dry more for what he did, which was nowhere near as bad. One last thing. Everton apparently don't have clauses. This is the Telegraph reporting today that Everton don't have relegation clauses in many of the contracts. The club deny this, but sources have revealed to the Telegraph that they don't have relegation clauses in the contracts of many of their highest earners. And then they started to list off all of the players who are on 100 grand a week or more, because we've been told in the past. We had Mark Lawrenson on, and he was saying, you would not believe the money that some of those players at Everton are on. You would not believe it. I think he repeated it 3 times, because we had assumed 100 grand a week. And there was, I don't know, certainly since then, other people have been in touch with us to say their sources tell them that the 100 grand a week is conservative. 100 grand a week might be the basic, but there's probably on top of that showing up for training, reporting alive and well at the start of the season, win bonuses, which obviously aren't being paid very often at the moment, but there's probably minutes and performance bonuses built in. And so maybe some of them, the salaries might be up around, when you take everything into account, 170 or 180 grand a week. And there are no clauses that if we go down to the Championship, we're not going to pay you Premier League wages, we're going to pay you Championship wages. Again, just going to highlight how badly run a club Everton has been. And now they have Frank Lampard, who was popular with the fans as the manager. So maybe it's on the fans. It's all their fault.
Do Liverpool and Manchester City have relegation clauses in their players' contracts?
I don't know, I presume...
I'm asking because I wonder, is part of Everton's problem that they have not seen themselves at that level, but they have always been looking up, and that's part of the sell, that if you're talking to Yerry Mina and you're saying, well, we're going to stick in a relegation clause because it's always the possibility around here. Well, Yerry Mina's going, whoa, I prefer the old Champions League bonus clause here.
Well, I was going to say, maybe there's not a Champions League bonus clause for the Liverpool and Man City players, but there might be, you don't qualify for the Champions League, you get less money. There might be those clauses.
Possibly. I'm not altogether shocked that Everton don't have relegation clauses, but it does just add up to there's no team who would suffer more financially if they were to go down than Everton, with what's going on with Usmanov, the potential move, or not even the potential move, the move to the new stadium, the commitments that the club has financially. It would be an utter disaster. And there are no it's the old cliche. There are no guarantees that Everton, even with that squad, would come straight back up, because 6, 7, 8 of those players are going to have to leave. They're going to have to get rid of those players off the wage bill. But also, a lot of those players are international footballers. There's a World Cup coming up in December. They don't want to be playing Championship football. So suddenly Jordan Pickford, Yerry Mina is gone. Alan doesn't want to be there. Decore,
Richarlison, Andre Gomes,
Richarlison, Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
They're all supposed to be earning 100 grand. Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a little bit not far behind, is what it says in the paper. And they say that they lost 150 last year. Wages were 165 million. And obviously they've just lost their sponsorship deals with the Russian companies, and the Usmanov money that ain't coming back. And the shirt sponsor Kazoo is not going to renew for next season, so that's an opportunity for them to get somebody else in. But if you're not a Premier League team, Everton could be the new Leeds.
It doesn't look amazing. Like, I mean, you're looking at some of the figures, and like even just looking at a Mail piece on it, they were due to publish their accounts in December for the 2020-2021 season, but they delayed that because they sought clarification from the league over how much of their losses can be offset due to the impact of COVID. So it seems that they've put that on ice just for the time being because they're quite afraid of what's going to happen when the truth comes out about what's happened over the last little while. So it's anticipated that it's going to be another loss in excess of £100 million basically, and that will COVID be enough of a reason. Maybe that in line with Russia, they'll be able to make an argument saying, listen, these are understandable losses. But I think there is a genuine fear that at some point there could be a points deduction coming down the line, which we rarely have ever see in the top tier of English football. You add to that the prospect of relegation, and it's a bit of an apocalypse situation in the near future for Everton, it seems.
This time next year, we'll be like, can Wayne Rooney keep Everton in the Championship?
Yeah.
It'll be one of the great stories of English football if he manages to get them over the 12-point deduction that they've suffered.
It's going to be Rooney's gig, is it? Has your team suffered a horrible loss of points? Wayne Rooney strolls in, and they must have, and it backs up those figures there, over the last 5 years, lost an insane amount of money in not being able to recoup transfer fees. Like, how many of those players, we talk about what Jurgen Klopp has done in improving value, how many players at Everton are better now than they were when they signed for the club or have come through? Like, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is the one. Aside from that, like, even Richarlison screws me over week on week, killing me, this kid.
Your boy Richarlison.
But they paid 40 million for Richarlison.
Yeah.
So are they going to get more than 40 million? There was a period 18 months ago where you thought actually
Newcastle, Man United
could be a 60, 70 million. And maybe Newcastle bailed them out and sign Yerry Mina for 50 million.
Well, they're not going to. Newcastle aren't being stupid. It appears as if they're going to sign the Rudigers of the world who are available for free and pay them the wages and take the risk that way, because you sign Rudiger for a season on crazy wages, you can sell him after that first season because you've given him a 3 or 4 year deal and the transfer fee was zero. So there is at least some business sense going into the shopping, and they're going to be doing it from a position where they're mid-table as opposed to battling relegation after the Eddie Howe turnaround. All right, it's 8:02 this morning here on OTB AM. Elite Fives is a 50 grand five-a-side amateur football tournament which takes place this June in the AUL complex. It's set to be Ireland's biggest five-a-side tournament ever. It's 160 teams, it's over 2 days, and there's 50 grand to the winner. Amazing stuff. Roddy Collins is involved in the launch today. Roddy, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. You've just killed me. I mean, you're talking about millions. We thought we'd come in with a big, prize money, 65 grand all in. Yeah, that's it. 50 grand for the winners, 10 grand for second, 5 grand for third place.
So we had David Myler on the show last week, and he was saying that he was home one summer and one of his mates was like, here, could you come down and play a bit of five-a-side? And it turned out it was a league final. And Myler played and they won something like 12-2 and he scored a couple from centre back. What's the story on ringers in this? Are you playing yourself? No ringers.
It's for junior players, corporates. It's for your lads in the pub. So it's elite fives, it's called, but it's no elite players.
Right. So
it's just, it gives everyone a chance. It's a 2-day festival. Sorry?
I had Jack Burnham Wales ready to go on my team.
No, sorry, Jack's an ambassador actually, so Jack won't be involved. I don't know if there's an exemption for maybe Kenny Cunningham or overage players, but from all the details are there anyway to be checked out. But no, I think it's a brilliant idea. I mean, when I played back in the day, in my time, I won a television once. That was it, in a five-side tournament, the Ballyfermot. But it was the done team back then, 5-a-side, 7-a-side, you go around in a van. But this is unbelievable. I mean, 50 grand for the winners, 2-day festival in the AUL. I mean, that could be life-changing for a football club,
Oh, totally. Club. Absolutely, yeah. And is there a Masters tournament? Are you still sticking on boots yourself?
No, not yet. They're looking into that one, But get this one out of the way first. Then there could be a Masters, then there could be a corporate, then there could be an All-Ireland league with a final. So I think it's just a brilliant idea. That's why I got involved, So no, this is the one. June 2 days out in the AUL, and great concept.
It is a great concept, and we wish them all the very best with the launch today. We'll tweet out details of where you can.
All the information is on Elite Fives on Instagram, or it's on eventbrite.ie on Friday. You can book your team in then. So they're the details, but as I say, it's unbelievable. 50 grand for the winners. I know where I'd be down if I got to the final. I'd be splitting it 30 grand each. I've done me figures, lads. You've a few corporate.
One all draw.
Sorry?
It'd be like watching Ireland, Holland at the World Cup.
Yeah, Ireland and Holland. I was at that game. Yeah. And the fans were singing England go home. But no, it's great. I mean, I just thought we mocked this yesterday. And they said 50 grand. And what they could do with that for to resurface maybe one of the kids' pitches or kit, equipment, dressing room refurbishment. Or then I spoke to a couple of corporates. Yeah, they thought maybe a month away in the Bahamas, you know. So yeah,
I prefer the first one with the kids getting an extra playing surface rather than the corporates getting a month in the Bahamas.
I said Jared rather go on the lash somewhere.
I will take a trip to the Bahamas too. I don't want to get that wrong. Roddy, the League of Ireland at the moment, right? There's the game is sold out in Tala. I think 4 or 5 days early. Rovers have had record ticket sales for season tickets. We've seen a surge in season ticket sales for all of the clubs. Are you feeling the same sense of positivity about the league that most people are?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Especially, you know, it enhances every game. I've played in empty grounds, many of them, mostly. But when you have a crowd, it does enhance the appearance. It makes it a better occasion for everybody, for the supporters and for the players. You know, so I mean, they got Daily Mail sold out before the season starts. Season ticket holders. Now, when we say sold out, they're very small numbers, but it doesn't matter. It would just be more enjoyable if you had bigger stadiums like Tala, where you would get, you know, sold out crowds most week, good performances, and build. But you know, and I have to throw it down. But my argument is, I was in Tolka for the first game with Shells, and I really enjoyed what happened on the pitch. But look, lads, it's a dump, and Daily Mount's a dump, and there's other, you know, Drogheda, Finn Harps, and I've been told to shut up, but we have to keep saying it because we need more grounds to replicate Tala and to make it a better day out. That's what we need. And once you get, every year in every club, pardon me, in every league in the world, it starts off with great enthusiasm, you get crowds in. What keeps them there? You know, mostly the result, if it's a home team. But then again, you've got to add to that and say, well, if the weather's inclement, there's other, you know, not activities, but there's other luxuries there that you can enjoy other than the game. And that's where it's always going to fall out, lads. So sorry for being a killjoy, but
no, I think it's important. I think that's exactly right. That like it's the product now outstrips the quality of the environment in which the product is happening. The stuff on the pitch is actually, the quality has vastly improved. The throughput of young Irish players coming through, playing ball and trying to play ball and then stepping from the League of Ireland straight into teams in England or Scotland and then ultimately playing for the national team really quickly. I think that's all.
That's what we want. I mean, that's what we've done for years. I mean, that's how we developed our international players. You know, a lot of players like Ronnie Wheeler went away maybe 16, 17 years of age. But, you know, it's, how can I say, everything's improved. Quality of player, quality of coaching, the whole lot. But unfortunately, the facilities have left all that behind, and it's a pity because when you go to a game, like for argument's sake, and I keep going back about the first game in Tolka, it was one of the most miserable nights ever. You can't blame either club on that one. But if you didn't enjoy football, for argument's sake, if I brought my wife and one of my kids, I mean, I'm there to watch the football. I wanted to see how Damien set up his team, and I was very impressed with that. But other than that, I mean, people with you who weren't looking at what's on the pitch are thinking, Jesus, this is miserable. You know, what are we coming down here for? And that's the argument they have. But on the pitch, excellent. Coaching, kids developing, yeah, I'm really happy with that.
Yeah, well, hopefully there can be a concerted effort by all of the clubs to lobby the government for proper funding and resources, because we see Tala is successful. It worked. It has completely transformed what people think about when they're going to a League of Ireland venue and what the expectations are. All the visiting fans come and seeing, why can't we have this? And that's, maybe you hope that's some kind of tipping point.
Well, I mean, last week there was an argument over the surface in Sligo. Stephen O'Donnell was ranting on about that, and rightly so. And I'm ranting on about the stadiums. You know, when are we going to start? Like, you know, I hate saying it, lads, but I've got to say it. I mean, I made my debut in Finn Harps 1978. And honestly, I've been up there in recent years and nothing has changed. You know, just the point I'm trying to make. And you're saying we get a concerted effort, we lobby everyone, and we get government grants and the whole lot. But you will find most clubs, and there's been a few grants thrown around, it goes into their budget. Because I asked a question one day, many days, when I was up at one of the hearings up in the FAI, there was a figure out in the open arena about ground improvements, and clubs got a combined figure of so many million. And I asked the question, I said, can you just tell me one ground that's benefited from that? Or have you seen it? Because I know for a fact it was going into players' budgets. And that's the problem. But if we can get the grounds and the arenas properly facilitated, you will get people in, and then you will not have to dip into the refurbishment money, because you'll have a culture of the tour styles. And then when people come in, advertisement comes, you get sponsorship because of the exposure. And, we need to get the grounds right. I'll just finish up. I went to a game in the 7th tier of English football a month ago. Wimborne was the club. I had a meal before the game with about 200 people. I went out and sat in a real comfortable stand, not a big one, but nice and comfortable. Pitch was like a billiard table. Half time, I had coffee and a sandwich. And after the game, the away team had a full meal. That was the 7th tier, lads. Now, on the pitch wasn't great, but you will go away remembering all the other luxuries that you had and the enjoyment you had in the day. So that's what we need to do, lads.
Yeah, no, that's all fair. You're writing a book, Roddy?
Yeah. Jesus, lads. This is unbelievable. I've been asked to do it a lot of times by a few people, but when Paul Howard came along, I couldn't refuse. But it's very intense. I didn't realise how hard it was, to be honest with you.
I was going to say, there's a lot to pick over. All the good stuff is great, but all the stuff that you kind of, we're Irish males.
You nearly let that word out, the bad stuff. What bad stuff? Bad stuff?
We all have bad stuff.
I've actually had a brilliant life. It's been tough, honestly. When you read back in it and you think of all the years you've missed out of the dugout, you think, Jesus. But then you think, why? And like I'm saying to you now, I've stood up for the cause, suffered for it. But I enjoyed the bits that were successful. But no, look, it's down on paper now. I probably need to book a flight to Australia, get a team of solicitors to back me up to the hill, and there'll be a few people hiding under the bed, I think.
When's it out?
It's what?
When is the book out?
It's out September 2022. We're just going through it now. I finished chapter 5 reading it myself. The whole thing is done. I just had to go through the transcript and, just verify and check dates and names and the whole lot. But it's out then. So that's surreal, but we'll see what people think. At the end of the day, it's my truth anyway.
Yeah, well, look, we're looking forward to it. Roddy, thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Great stuff. Don't forget now, Elite Fives. Who's man enough to come up? Oh, by the way, I hope Newstalk are putting a team in.
Team off the ball, man.
There's enough experts in there. Come on, lads.
You can be in the dugout for us.
Kenny Cunningham, centre back.
Yeah. Snow will never get a game if I'm in the dugout.
Who?
Oh, Malloy. It's a 7-a-side. He'll be the 8th man. Oh, there you go.
Thanks.
All right, lads.
Thanks a million, Roddy.
Thanks. See you, lads. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Elite Fives launching today at lunchtime. Keep an eye out for it and get entering your team. 65 grand in prize money up for grabs over a weekend in June. 50 grand to the winners.
That is a lot of pressure in the teams in that final. For amateur players who, that's...
Are we going to put the worst team in? Are we?
Definitely. Like it is pressure just... As you're playing there, the kids line up to watch the game, knowing that they won't have new dugouts if you end up losing that final.
All right. Late Night Live, Late Night LOI, Late Night LOI. What's it called, Nathan? LOI
League
After
of
Dark?
Ireland Late Night. League of Ireland Late Night.
League of Ireland Late Night.
Not half as seedy as you like to make it out to be. But yes, back Friday night, 10 o'clock. Going to be a big one. Going to be the biggest one yet. Rovers, Bows. Rovers have already lost twice. If they lose again, Ger, will we have some angry Rovers fans on?
Well, I mean, it's brilliant for the league. The one thing about Rovers getting their house in order was that if we did have a Rosenborg situation where they won the league, then the rest of it would have been less interesting. But it's great for the league that there is competition.
Yeah, I'd say one more defeat and Rovers will be past that. Jack Byrne said and sort of acknowledged that, yes, we want a situation where there's big houses, full crowds, at the end of the season. But I think the novelty of that will wear off pretty quickly if they lose another couple of games, is to make it interesting for everybody else. But listen, Roddy makes some great points. We're all wanting to be optimistic about the league and what the league can become, and there is an audit as part of the FAI strategy of all the various bits of infrastructure around the League of Ireland, but it is the number one thing that is holding it back. Aside from Tala, are any of these stadiums in Dublin better now than they were 20 years ago when Roddy was winning leagues with Bowls?
No, they're worse.
Not really.
All right.
So
Nathan, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
Nathan Murphy with us this Wednesday morning. OTBAM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Still to come, football with Graham Hunter. We're hearing from a very special project in Palestine and much more. Fiona Hayes, though, is talking rugby next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
I don't miss the meetings about meetings about meetings.
Munster legends Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs are joining forces to bring you all the latest analysis, news, interviews and so much more.
I had 6 head coaches in 14 years. Next year Keith Earls will be on to his 7th head coach in 16 years. You know, culturally we were probably lost for a few years.
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the Rugby channel on the OTB SPORTS app and turn on your notifications now.
With prices from only €289 for fully comprehensive car insurance, everyone's making the jump to getsetgo.ie. New business policies only. Prices subject to minimum premiums. T's and C's apply. MCL Insurance Services Limited Trading is getsetgo.ie is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
16 minutes past 8 this morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. We'd love if you would subscribe to the OTB AM podcast feed. We put up the show in segments. We put the whole show up as well. It's easy for you to get access to. You can get it on any podcast platform, although the OTB Sports app is the easiest and handiest one for you to do that. Now, I'm delighted to say Fiona Hayes is with us this morning to look forward to Ireland against England, which is on this weekend. Fiona, good morning to you.
Good morning. Delighted to be here.
Tell us, so what's your reaction to the news that we have made a big bet? It's not a secret. We knew what was going to happen. We knew that Johnny Sexton was going to sign a new deal and would be staying through until the World Cup. He said that's the end for him. It does mean, though, that our eggs are very firmly in the Johnny Sexton basket.
I think so, but I also think that with this, you know, we're getting Joey a bit more game time. I think we know exactly what Johnny's like injury wise. So it'll kind of depend on, I suppose, when we look at the summer tour, we'll get a chance, hopefully over in New Zealand, to get a few guys more game time. It's been kind of levelled out, and hopefully in this England game at the weekend at Twickenham, we'll see both out halves get on and get a shot at Aclai, that we know Sexton is the man at the minute, and hopefully when it comes to World Cup he will still be playing the way he is, and he's been protected a lot by Leinster, as Eddie Jones pointed out in his press conference the other day. But it's great for me. I think he's an outstanding player, and he's still bringing it at this age of 36 to the game.
We're not hostage to Sexton either, though. I mean, if he's not the starting 10 for the World Cup on form, he won't be the starting 10. I don't think yesterday's news changes the fact that the starting out half for Ireland in next year's World Cup is going to be based on merit.
That's it, and we've seen those in selections this season, especially that it's guys based on form that are getting picked. You know, if Johnny isn't playing well, if he isn't getting enough game time with Leinster, or if he's got a few niggly injuries, I think he won't be out there. We've seen the promise of 10s coming through. You know, there's people crying out for Jack Carty, but we know exactly what Johnny Sexton can bring. And I think after this Six Nations, we'll see definitely a pecking order in those 10s, and everything will hopefully be based on form going forward from that.
I mean, the point that Eoin makes is, really, if somebody takes the jersey off him, they will get the opportunity to take the jersey off him. But there's so limited, significant opportunities. There's the summer tour that you talked about. In the November window, we'll have 2 difficult tests, and then there's next year's Six Nations, and that's it. So the number of games in which you can take that jersey off him is very low. And is there even an opportunity for any of the younger Munster halves to get a window where they're going to get the big games in Europe now, because we have to give those big games in Europe to Carberry if he is going to be given an opportunity to push Sexton? And it feels like we've fixed in that this is the pecking order already, and it feels like we're kind of repeating some of the mistakes of previous generations?
Hopefully not. I think we've been crying out for a pecking order like the last year or so. You know, we've had guys come in, we've had the Burns in and out. So I think it's good. I think we're seeing a bit of structure. We know Andy Farrell has talked about form. So yeah, the big games, maybe there isn't opportunities, but I think we have enough out halves there at the minute. We're kind of focusing on the likes of Carberry, who will have to go back in and start ahead of the likes of Ben Healy or Flannery. That's just the way it is for him to get the game time. So there isn't massive opportunity with the games, you know, and obviously we don't have, you know, an Ireland A team. We don't have those games. So it's kind of, I think it's good that this structure is in place. I think we're in the right time for it to happen, for us to settle on maybe Joey being back up to Johnny. And I suppose everyone is just praying that we can keep him fit and playing at the standard he's playing at the minute.
Yeah, the trouble is that both of them are injury prone in different ways. Like Sexton will play, come back, puts his body on the line, suffers injuries as a result of that frequently, and misses games at this stage of his career as well. That can happen where a hamstring injury that, you know, in his 20s would have healed after 2 weeks, suddenly a 4-weeker. So who's next after that? Because we haven't really seen a minute of Carty that wasn't like in chaos time at the end of the France game. Under this regime, and after that, I don't know who is the fourth choice. Is it Healy? Is it who is it? Is it Billy Burns? Is it Ross Byrne?
I think in looking at what's been going on, I don't think Billy Burns. I think he's had his chance and he hasn't really grabbed that jersey. So I think we've moved on from that. We saw Carty get up this time ahead of him. We haven't seen loads of Carty, but I think Farrell is looking at the provinces, and that's where they'll get their chance. So if either the two guys, if both get injured, I think he has to go back and look to that drawing board and see who's the informed player. And you know, you will argue that Healy can play well at times, but he's in and out of that Munster team with Crowley at the minute because we see him in form. The Burns, I think Ross got injured again the other day, so it is really hard. And I suppose that's the joys of rugby, is that especially in that position at 10, you're going to have big massive lads running down your channel really all the time. So it's kind of trying to keep the guys flowing at province level and hopefully hoping they'll take that step up. For me, I think it's Carty is the guy that's definitely there. We haven't got enough because Carberry has to see him enough, because Carberry's had to probably get that game time, especially against Italy. So it's just after that we'll see what's in Farrell's head. Hopefully we won't have to see that.
Yeah, it's you know, it is a difficult situation for the coaching ticket, because they do need to see Joey Carberry play every available minute to see if he's capable of playing at the level that we think he is, because we just haven't seen it with injuries. But it's not a ridiculous scenario where you would have both Sexton and Carberry potentially injured at the same time in a World Cup, missing one game, or maybe missing 2 games, or maybe both gone for a period of time. And after that, it's like, well, here's somebody we looked at 4 years ago for the World Cup and hasn't really had much of an opportunity since. And then there's a bunch of young players who we're not sure about.
Yeah, when you say it like that, you know, you don't know what they're thinking. They might have said, look, we're going to New Zealand, we are going to divide out that game time. They obviously understand the injury profile of both players, and we haven't seen the likes of Carty, we haven't seen the likes of Healy or whoever else is behind in that order step up and play enough games. So I would be hopeful that maybe, although it's 3 New Zealand tests, that these guys would get to play at that level and they'd get the appetite for it. And then in November we could see if they've taken that step up or if they've been playing really well at the Europeans. He might switch a few of these guys in, looking at the World Cup ahead.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about what you expect to happen against England. Eddie Jones is saying we're the most cohesive team in world rugby. He's love bombing us in the advance of this one, which is not really stereotypical Eddie Jones, but certainly trying to ratchet up the pressure on us and take the pressure off his team, which is under a lot of pressure at the moment. So we should ignore that, really, shouldn't we? And just look at the respective strengths of the two teams and go, Ireland are a much stronger team at the moment, and we should be able, when we are the stronger team, to go and inflict our game plan on the opposition and win these games.
Yeah, we know what Eddie's about. He's obviously taking the pressure off his own lads. And I think for an English coach to say any team going over to Twickenham and being, firm favourites and talking about us like that, we know that he's probably talking a little bit of crap saying that, because it's a very hard place to go to. It's a very hard place for any team. We saw that, we've seen England in the last 2 games. They're not great. The 23-19 win over Wales was good. They're building a little bit. They're swaying from their game plan maybe in the past of big ball carriers. We're not seeing that as much. There's not as much bulk, I don't think, in the teams. He's switched Harry Randall in, so we're seeing less of a kicking game from the 9. So I think Ireland just need to focus on themselves, and that's what they'll do. They know they're building as well. Italy, we can't take much from that game, but I think in the second half of France, we came out and we gave it a blast. Italy, as I said, we saw players put their hand up and say, look, if I want to get in this starting team as well. So there's good competition, we know, up at camp. So I think Ireland will just be focusing on their own game plan. We'll be going out and playing the exact same style of rugby we've been seeing from those first few tests against France.
And like that, sorry Fiona, like that point has been brought up a bit, this idea, and I guess Eddie Jones is the one putting it forward that Ireland maybe are in a better place than England. Are Ireland on paper a better team than England? Because it does seem that England are still kind of working out what sort of team they want to be, and on paper they still have plenty of quality and have traditionally had way more quality than Ireland.
I think Ireland are far more cohesive in what I'm watching with England. I think he's thrown a few guys in. We've seen, the likes of Freddie Stewart's gone into full back. We see Daly and Slade in the centre partnership. It just doesn't look like it's gelling. Obviously, he'd love to have Tuilagi in there. So I think he's building. This Ireland team, I think Andy Farrell has got them settled. I think we saw, especially when Johnny's on there, he's pulling those strings. We have guys stepping up as first receiver that we probably wouldn't have had maybe 3-4 years ago. We've props in there, every position. Everyone's ball skills is at a high level, and we're seeing that. We're seeing Ireland play a lot of ball, but there's also an understanding between players, and they have a really, really good understanding of the game plan as well that he's trying to give.
So that's great. How do we get better over the next 12, 14, 16 months?
Yeah, that's it. We don't want to peak too soon anyway. We've seen that in the past. We don't want to be upping ourselves too soon. I think we just need to keep building, and I suppose the biggest thing is what you talked about, lads, earlier, is that depth. So we've got to get more guys into that position. We've got to get the likes of Lowry in full back for some games. We've got to get a couple of those back rows in there. We've got to get Coombs in there. As you spoke, we've got to start switching up the 10s. We obviously want to win games. Ireland have the potential to win a lot of games, but we've got to win them by making a few changes. So when we get to that World Cup that everyone's on the same level, they're all playing that high intense rugby, but they're all comfortable, and that cohesion hasn't gone because maybe 2 players have gotten injured.
So do you make changes for this week on the basis that the players are supposed to be interchangeable, they're supposed to be capable of stepping in, and this is the opportunity to do that? Or do you go back to the team that really beat Wales in that first game and go, that's our team? With the exception of Porter, obviously.
Yeah, obviously Porter. I think he's going to go back to that team. I think he's looked at this Six Nations, obviously. France, we've talked about how good they are. We're hoping that maybe they can slip up, and we're next in line. So the Six Nations is still there to be taken. So I think he will go back to that first squad that we've seen, bar Porter. We might see Healy coming in with Kilcoyne on the bench. I think there's still a little bit more in that team, and I think he wants to see more out of those guys. So although, we should be interchanging some players, I think he did that against Italy. So I think he will go back for this big Twickenham test, and I think he will go with the original team that we started in that very first game at the Six Nations.
And one last question then. Henshaw in instead of Aki, or Aki in and Henshaw on the bench?
I think he's going to go with Aki. I think especially against that England midfield, we need Aki. We need that power game, and we know what he can bring. I think Henshaw could come on off the bench. That would be my take on it. He's suited to England, I think, Aki. I think he loves that attacking. He loves getting over that gain line and getting those offloads away. Obviously, Henshaw can offer you a lot more as well. But with this game, it's going to be a kicking game from England. Maybe if they start Ben Ben Young. So I would think that we would try to attack, and maybe Aki's the best man to be carrying us over that gain line.
All right, give us your prediction.
I think it's going to be closer than a lot of people think, but I think Ireland by +4.
All right, good stuff. Fiona, enjoy the game. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Fiona Hayes giving us her thoughts there. If you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can leave a comment in the YouTube stream. And a reminder, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. It's bang on 8:30 this morning. Let's bring you some Brian O'Driscoll goodness, and then we're going to get into Rassie Erasmus and just exactly why he is a cult hero in South Africa. So Brian O'Driscoll was with Joe in studio last night to look ahead to the game. Here he is talking about the difference between Johnny Sexton and Marcus Smith.
You know what, as well, it's worth just stating, not to labour the point, but in spite of the general improvement in Ireland that we have seen, this Six Nations has once again underlined Sexton's importance. Even against Italy, the difference when he came on versus the previous 60, everything just looked better, smoother, more fluid.
Sure, Joey had just softened them up in the first 55, 60 minutes. For you know, people say they were Joey detractors in some shape or form. It's clear as day, you know, what he does add. And it's funny, I've watched a lot of footage this week because we're doing a piece at the weekend with ITV on Marcus Smith versus Johnny Sexton, and both of them understand space. They really do. But Johnny's understanding is pure experience, whereas Marcus gets it, but he's got this incredible athletic prowess that gets him out of trouble that wouldn't allow other players to be able to survive. And also he backs himself so much. He's, if in doubt, he'll back himself, whereas Johnny's now really using his intellect. He's an inferior athlete to Marcus Smith and inferior to many other 10s, but still very capable. If you offer him a gap, he'll still go through it. So it's his passing game and his vision and his ability to attract defenders and then pick the right option is the real differentiator between another player of 37 or 38 and him, and that's why he's still our number one.
Yeah, for sure. And he's going to start the game this weekend. I think everybody accepts that is definitely going to be the case. We'll come back to that. That team will be named later in the week, and we'll have rugby every day building up to the game against England, to the Southern Hemisphere now. So Rassie Erasmus has done a couple of interviews with the Mail. Really interesting stuff where he's talked about the video that was leaked in the aftermath of the first test that was massively critical of the referee ahead of the second test, and that clearly had an impact. But he's also talked about the Six Nations and whether or not South Africa should be as part of it. So Stephen Kisby-Green, our resident South African, is with us. Stephen, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How's it going?
So last time we had you on the show, I think you were actually in South Africa with what was the name of the bird?
The Drakensberg.
What are you looking at me for?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in the background. So you've come back.
Yes. Yeah.
And Rassie's gone public. Delighted with life. Like, absolutely delighted. I've never seen a man suspended from anything ever in his life who has enjoyed his suspension as much as Rassie is.
That's proper South African yes. What can we say? It's you get suspended, you're still getting paid, so he goes on a holiday. Why not?
It's a very long holiday where he invites a journalist from the Daily Mail down to spend, a good bit of quality time and get his side of the story across. I think is what's happened over the last few days.
Yeah, sorry, I was just looking at Rassie's Twitter account. We've seen that, right?
Yeah.
This morning.
No.
Oh no. What are you putting?
Quote tweeted an organisation called that Off the Ball.
Oh really?
Yeah. So we'll come back to that in a while. If you want to do the context first, and Matt Williams was obviously talking about him earlier in the week. So we'll come back to that.
I mean, he's put together a really nice application for the England job, if you ask me, because he's taking this Daily Mail interview as opposed to a South African organisation. He's kind of testing the waters a little bit as to how the English are going to receive him, how we're going to receive him over here. It's a very well calculated move on his part, I think.
Wow. I love my conspiracy theories on this show. That never once crossed my mind. I just thought that he's in a job for life here. It's the job of his dreams. This is exactly what he wanted. He's got everybody where he wants them. He's got the South African Rugby Republic eating out of his hands. He's got the rest of the world. Everybody hates us. We don't care. Proper. And it worked. Everything he's done ever has worked.
Well, exactly. But in the second part of the interview, he actually goes on to say that he's only in the director of rugby role until after the World Cup.
Right.
And he said that he'll be more than happy to take on England if England offer it to them, and if the English fans don't hate him. But at the moment, he does feel like the English fans hate him. South African fans love him. Irish fans don't really like him too much, except for maybe the Munster fans.
Munster fans love him, presumably. Although they do feel a little bit like he walked out on them.
Yeah. But no, I think it's still very much love for Rassie, to be honest.
I forgot you were a Munster fan there. Sorry.
Well, yeah.
Do you really think that?
I absolutely think in the Munster hardcore, the feeling towards Rassie is love, and that it would have taken far more of a betrayal than for a man to go back to his home country.
Exactly.
To go.
I think that's the only one they could have forgiven him for. If he'd gone to England, it would have been like, no, screw you.
Exactly.
But the fact that he went home and won the World Cup, there is undying loyalty towards Rassie from the Munster hardcore.
I think so.
And you can understand why the South Africans seem to have that similar sort of loyalty with him after winning a World Cup. Irish fans might know what that feels like eventually. But he doesn't want to betray the South African fans by going over to England if they do think that it will be an issue. But at the same time, this is the fact that he didn't go to like SA Rugby magazine, for example, which is one of the biggest rugby magazines in South Africa, to do this sort of deep dive interview. He went to the Daily Mail. It shows that he's very intelligently placing where he wants to put these sorts of ideas. Again, there's also the idea of the Six Nations. He wants to try and win the support for South Africa joining the Six Nations, if they do.
He thinks it's going to happen, judging from this?
He thinks his exact words were he thinks it would be awesome. And it does make sense from his to a certain point of view, point of view. If you think same sort of time zone, the flight times are not too dissimilar to flying over to New Zealand or Australia. In fact, it actually takes you longer to fly from South Africa to Australia or New Zealand by about 3 or 4 hours. And then obviously when you get to New Zealand and Australia, you got to sit around for like 6 or 7 hours to get actually used to the time zones. Whereas I've done the trip recently coming back from South Africa. It's really, I was in work the next day and there was no problem at all. So that does make sense. But I don't think it's going to happen personally. I also don't think it's a good idea personally, even though I really want to see the Springboks come and play in the Aviva so I can actually watch some good rugby in the Aviva. But no, I don't think Rassie's gunning for it to happen, but he does think the door is open.
Like, you guys really do owe us. We spanked you so bad, you got rid of your head coach and put Rassie in. That's the sliding doors moment in South African rugby. Whereas if we just beaten you by 3 points or let you have a crappy win, then you still would have had the crap coach. Rassie would have won a Heineken Cup with Munster, and life would have been totally different. So it's on us, Stephen. We will take your gratitude.
No. Well, Eddie Jones in Japan as well.
It's almost on Brent Pope's halftime spiel at that time, which obviously Rassie
also quote tweeted.
Has often quote tweeted. Yeah, that was the night Rassie says he didn't make his mind up to take the South Africa job, but really it was the night I'd say that he wanted it.
So let's talk about the interview as well. What's the fallout been in South Africa? You were obviously coming up with that. I presume that is now people are like, oh, Rassie isn't just ours for life.
Yeah, it's kind of like a lot of South African fans at the moment, they will sort of be a little bit, by something they'll be annoyed if he does leave. Like, Rassie used the word hate a lot in the interview. I think that was also a calculated move because he wants to try and test the waters to see how much the betrayal might hurt South Africans. But I don't think too many South Africans will hate him for leaving if he does go over to England, for example. Because also you can't, he's not in a head coach role at the moment. He's director of rugby, and he's such a brilliant rugby brain that you can't keep him away from head coaching for too long. I don't think he's young. He's got he's relatively young for a head coach. He's got plenty of time to win World Cups with different teams. So I don't see too many South Africans hating him for leaving. It'll be interesting though if he leaves to England, because the only team that South Africans don't really like more than the Australians is probably the English.
That's fair enough. I think everybody feels the same. So the other issues that he raised, he talked about making Sia Khaleesi captain.
Yeah, that was a he mentioned he lost a couple of friends in doing so, and he also quotes some of his daughter's parents telling them to tell him that he must stop trying to please his bosses or whatever. And it does kind of, like, there is that undertone, there was that undertone at the time that it was a quota signing or a quota appointment, which obviously it wasn't, and Rassie stated that point blank, Thea stated that point blank. But there was that undertone from a lot of different pockets of South African society where some people were saying, oh no, he's doing this just to make his job in South Africa more secure. Others were saying that it was purely based on the colour of Sia's skin. And
so there was a visceral racist reaction to it.
I wouldn't say it was visceral, but it was an undertone of a racist reaction to it, yes. And it was the loud minority as opposed to the overarching majority. And for a lot of people, it was like nobody noticed that it was Sia. I mean, okay, no, everyone noticed because it was obviously the first time it was a black South African captaining the Springboks. But for a lot of people, it was done on form, and you could see the leadership that he has in the group, not only with the Stormers, but also with the Springboks themselves. But at the same time, they also had the issue with Warren Whiteley. There was a lot of people saying that Warren Whiteley wasn't the right captain for the job because he wasn't the best player in his position. I mean, he was up against Inter Milan at the time, and Warren Whiteley is a very atypical South African eighth man. He's more of a number 6 or 7 than he is an eighth man, but he was playing 8 and he was captain, and there was a lot of hatred there, but that was on a different level. So South Africans are never really happy all the time because they always think, oh no, my team's captain is better than your team's captain, so he should be captain of the Springboks, sort of thing.
Okay. Breaking Rassie news, what's he tweeting?
So there was a Monday Night Rugby clip which involved Matt Williams and Jerry Thornley, and Matt Williams was talking about Rassie's interview and said, I didn't see any value in him leaking the video. The content of that video is not bad. And Rassie Erasmus quote tweeted that clip saying, I love you, Matt Williams! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark.
What time in the morning is it? What was this?
11:45 p.m. Irish time last night, so that would have been
it's about
12:01.
No, it's 12:01, yeah.
So I don't know what that means. So I never know what tone to take from Rassie Erasmus. He's
holiday tweeting.
He's truly living rent free in all of our heads.
He was probably having a bit of a Branavein and Coke.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, that's brandy for you.
Okay. Right. So he can literally do what he wants at the moment in South Africa. He won a Lions series pretty straightforward in the end, but like using every tactic in the book. Won a World Cup. They're the best team in the world. He is beloved. He can walk on water.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right. SKG, thanks very much for that. It is 8:42 this morning here on OTB AM. Brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Episode 7 of the Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue is available right now on podcast in the Football Pod feed or in OTB GA. Here is James O'Donoghue talking about the main difference that we're already seeing between Peter Keane's Kerry and what Jack O'Connor is doing.
Kicking the ball.
It's very political here now, Jamesy. Watch your step here.
No, he's answering there. Hold on. Go on.
It's kicking the ball.
Okay.
Peter had it down, but there was times where we didn't move the ball fast enough, whereas I can imagine Jack inside is just saying, move it, move it, move it. And I could actually see it against Dublin. There was one stage where we were coming out the right half back position, and usually we'd nearly turn back, kind of hit a bit of traffic and maybe gone a hand pass backwards, but I could just tell that Jack did not want that. And the number 12, the half forward on the other side, had to make a diagonal run to receive a kick pass, kind of diagonal kick pass / down the line. And it was just that unbelievable hard run from the wing forward over to the other side, starts an attack and gets you out. And I don't think that the Kerry were doing that over the last year or two, but I think that there's going to be such an emphasis on it now, it's going to improve them.
And in terms of getting a message across to a squad, that can't just be a throwaway comment that we're going to kick it more, lads. Clearly that has to be drilled into them.
Every possible chance he gets, he's going to say kick it. And if it doesn't happen in training, he's going to stop training up. He's going to say, lads, that has to be kicked. And he's going to say it in a nice, calm way. But then you'll know that, look, if you kick it and you lose it, this is the way we're going with it.
Yeah.
But the benefits of it for Kerry, if you're kicking the ball to the two Cliffords, to Shawnee Shea, to Paul Gainey, why would you not do that? Why would you be hand-passing the ball around midfield or the half-back line?
Oh, there's a green and gold storm rising. You must be, I'm going to keep saying it, you must be excited.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I also think that what plays into his point there is that they've got loads of players so that they can afford to, go all out and go for the throat early in games and tire themselves out if they want to, because they'll have somebody outside of whatever
the subs bench is big,
players. Their subs are just so good at this point.
The only part about that is who are the hard-running half forwards who have to sacrifice everything for the team.
Enough
of those.
Yeah, like Adrian's plan has made a real step up this year. He's been arguably one of Kerry's best players so far this year, and can obviously slip into midfield as well. And they do have a lot of smaller versions of him too.
All right, John Duggan is with us at 8:45 this morning. John, good morning to you.
Ger and Eoin, how are you doing?
We've got time for a minute sports bulletin, but then we're going to get to the main meat and drink of the day. But what's going on?
Well, Liverpool, as we know, into the Champions League quarter-finals with that 1-0 defeat to Inter Milan last night at Anfield. Lautaro Martinez scoring a great goal, but then Alexis Sanchez was sent off, which really put paid to Inter's chances. So Liverpool go through 2-1 on aggregate. Bayern Munich also into the last 8, a thumping of Salzburg 7-1 on the night, and 8-2 on aggregate. Lewandowski with a hat-trick. All the money is going to be on show at the Bernabeu tonight with Real Madrid hosting PSG with a 1-0 lead for PSG from the first leg of their last 16 ties. So Messi et al. Going back to the Bernabeu with Toni Kroos injured, Casemiro suspended, Ramos is not going to be playing as well. So fascinating match that. We know Man City are through 5-0. They lead Sporting going into that game. Johnny Sexton, new deal until the end of the World Cup to 2023. And that's pretty much it, lads.
David says, good to see Troy Parrott score 2 last night. He's been playing but not scoring with an injury in between. Hopefully goes on a run.
MK Dons 3, Cheltenham Town 1. We also had Ryan Manning sent off for Swansea in their 5-1 defeat to Fulham. And Fulham have got a 14-point lead now, lads, at the top of the championship. So we'll be all going to Craven Cottage next season.
Oh, yeah, it's nice. A nice atmospheric venue. Even nicer than Pride Park. Right. We start this week's Virtual Insanity with a special tribute to the man of the moment, Puerto Rican Open champion Ryan Brem. Brem?
To be honest with you, I don't care one bit about Rory Mcilroy. I don't care one bit about that particular tournament. The Puerto Rico Open is where things were at the weekend. We had a 35-year-old Michigan player called Ryan Brem shoot the lights out. I would die for Ryan Brem. I would also die for John Duggan, to be honest with you, and Virtual Insanity. I would die for Ryan Brem. What an absolutely phenomenal moment this was to be a 50-1 shot. I think actually 66-1 is what John got him at, and watch him coast home at the end. An alternate reality where we're having a great time right now. Does Virtual Insanity just cover over for a dreadful life?
In order for the vessel to travel through time, it's got to find a porthole, or in this case, a wormhole.
I'm having a good time. There's definitely
of course. How could you not be?
There's definitely an alternate reality.
Wormhole.
Where maybe the world is not going to hell. All right.
Am I mushrooms, lads?
A little microdose of psilocybin in your earbuds.
That was amazing. I love the production teams. They come up with these amazing tunes and music that's always so apt for the occasion. Ryan Brem needed to win or be second last week to save his bacon on the PGA Tour. It was his first start of the season, and he had his wife on the bag, carrying his clubs for the 4 days, and obviously it worked, and he won by 6 shots. And it was, I had 6 players in that tournament. It was one of the players I picked, so we're not going to be jumping handstands, but it's good for a winner, you know?
I think we should celebrate the work of Joseph Conroy, who created the video and audio sting that you've just heard, and we should celebrate the work of John Duggan.
100%.
I didn't know how to pronounce Ryan Brem even after a week of listening to you talk about him.
Yeah, that's pretty bad on your behalf, Ger. He is.
Hey, what's the name of the South African bird?
He is I have no idea.
We just heard it again.
How many South African birds have won me 50 quid?
John, fix this.
So lads, so we've had a good year, folks. 66-1, 80-1, and 25-1 winners. Never gamble more than you can afford. But this is Virtual Insanity. The whole kind of fun of this is try to challenge yourself. Can you maybe pick a winner? It's not really about gambling necessarily. The Players' Championship starts tomorrow, guys. This is a really big tournament. This is what they call the 5th major. The field is extremely deep. It's all the best players in the world, apart from Tiger, who's going to be inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame this evening by his daughter, Sam, which is a nice touch. Phil Mickelson, as we know, is absent at the moment, and Bryson DeChambeau is injured. Everybody else is there, though. So Rory, we know, with the 2019 champion, could bounce back. It's going to be a soft course this week. It's going to rain. It might suit his game a bit more than last week. Shane Lowry had a top 10 in this last year, was second in the Honda Classic. Definitely he's got a big chance. Seamus Power is 50th in the world. He needs to stay there by the end of March to get into the Masters. So they're the three Irish lads. Normally to have about 20 quid virtually on these tournaments. I've got two pillars this week. So there's a Patrick Cantlay pillar and then there's everybody else. So the Patrick Cantlay pillar is €20. So Patrick Cantlay is the headline tip, 10 each way, 20 to 1. A lot of bookmakers are going to 9, 10, 11 places. This is 9 places with William Hill. Patrick Cantlay is, I'd say, the Rodney Dangerfield of golf. He don't get no respect. He is, to me, the guy who's going to be winning a major championship soon. Born on St. Patrick's Day, that's probably the extent of the Irish links. But like, if you look at his game, he's got no weaknesses. He was the PGA Tour Player of the Year last season. He won the Tour Championship. He won 4 times last season. He's a very unassuming, kind of quiet guy, just goes about his business. Has had, 3 top 5s already this season, is really good on the stats. At Sawgrass, people will go, well, he doesn't have form there or whatever. He was tied 7th going into the final round in 2017, tied 8th going into the final round in 2018. Had played there as a junior, says he loves the course, likes the Pete Dye design. I think Patrick Cantlay is overpriced at 20 to 1. He's the headline, a clear headline selection for me, lads. Patrick Cantlay, 10 each way, 20 to 1. So the other pillar then is the others. I actually asked people on Twitter, should we tip a few each ways? And they said, yeah, you should. So the others, Brooks Koepka, right? I think Brooks is coming back into form, 4 each way at 35 to 1. He shot a 63 here before, back in 2018. If it's the weather's going to be bad, he's a good bad weather player. One of the windy Shinnecock Hills, won the US Open there a few years ago. Driving the ball well again, he's a killer. Brooks Koepka will just kill you in the heat of a tournament. He's won 4 major championships. I think he'll like to win this tournament, and I think if he can put well this weekend at Sawgrass, he's definitely a big contender, Brooks. Matt Fitzpatrick, who he headlined last week, was tied for 9th at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. He was also tied for 9th in this last year at Sawgrass, 35 to 1 for 4 each way. He's a grinder. You might need to grind with thunderstorms, with wind, with all this kind of stuff they're going to face this weekend. And he's won the DP World Tour Championship twice, so he's not afraid to win a big tournament. Never won on US soil. I think Matt Fitzpatrick might have a chance this week. Then the 3 rank outside is for €1 each way, the 3 of them. Emiliano Grillo of Argentina is 200 to 1. Contended in this in 2017, played well in his last tournament, the Genesis Invitational, was hanging around the leaderboard in the final round, is a brilliant ball striker but a shaky putter. But I think that if he can make a few putts drop, Emiliano Grillo at 200 to 1 could get 40 to 1 a place. Dylan Fratelli, 250 to 1 for €1 each way, was tied 5th of the Masters on his rookie appearance in 2020, was 5th at the Open last year. There's no rhyme or reason whatsoever to this guy's form. But he can come out of nowhere and do something. He was 22nd in the Players on his only start last year in it, and he's been playing with little glimpses of form from Dylan Fratelli. I've noticed the South African was a good college player. And finally, Taylor Pendrick is 250 to 1 for €1 each way. 9th in driving distance, 4 par 5s here. Once again, I've noticed him as a rookie this year doing a few things. Should have won in Bermuda in difficult conditions. Was 4 times second in the Corn Ferry Tour last year. And I think he could surprise a few people in the next few tournaments. So Taylor Pendrith, Emiliano Grillo and Dylan Fratelli are the outsiders at massive prices, maybe to get into the top 10. But Brooks Koepka, Matt Fitzpatrick in the middle rank, and then the headline lads this week, Patrick Cantlay. And even if he doesn't win this week, I think his price will go out for the majors, and I think he will be a major champion this year.
All right, good stuff. That is this week's Virtual Insanity.
You have entered Power Drive.
All right, we'll run through the papers for you. We might start on OTBSports.com. Doherty shines as Coleman's rut continues. That's the discussion last night on the football show. We've got Virtual Insanity up there already. Jonathan Sexton versus Marcus Smith head to head. That's Brian O'Driscoll talking about that. And Rio Ferdinand saying it's not about the manager, it's about the players at Manchester United. It might be, I'm not sure. The manager hasn't worked out either, has it?
It's too early to say. But it's not too early to say that it hasn't. It's too early to say whether or not he's going to be a success at the club, which is the weird sort
might
of
not be involved in the
twilight
club
zone that we're in. But there is a contract that exists where Ranić is there as advisor.
I don't know. Is there is it guaranteed, or is it like if this goes okay, we will? Because somebody texted us yesterday or tweeted us yesterday to say you missed the quote of the weekend where Ralph Ranić said he has not yet been consulted or spoken to about the next manager. It's like,
Probably get on that now. To be honest, I think
mention it to him.
I think maybe he was appointed in the hope that he would be the guy.
Have some chips and sit down, break some bread.
Yeah.
Have a drink.
Have a prawn sandwich with the rest of the board, and come to the conclusion that you are not going to be the man in charge of the club next year, and start working on that.
Vladimir Klitschko has done an interview with Mike Walters, and it's run across the Mirror, and it's run across a couple of the papers today, actually. And the Klitschkos are launching a campaign to exclude Russia from all international sporting associations, ban Russian athletes from participating in any international competition, stop the sale of broadcast rights of international sports competitions, prohibit Russian companies from being sponsors of international competitions and clubs, support Ukraine by informing the world. That's the the slogan is no more Russia in international sport. Klitschkos are involved, Zinchenko is involved, and they've got the Yuri Sviridov, marketing director of Shakhtar Donetsk, is actually the campaign manager for the whole thing. So they're making the point that, very simply, Putin used sport for propaganda when Russia hosted the 2018 World Cup and the Winter Olympics in Sochi, and so therefore it's fair game to use sport back to punish Russia. It's like a fairly simple equation when it comes to that, which is it's definitely an interesting way. I was in two minds about stopping the Premier League games, because the Premier League games have been the sites of anti-Russian protests, and actually maybe if those matches are broadcast, there is more of an opportunity for the players to get messages back to the Russian people, which, let's face it, they're not going to get through any other media forms.
No. There obviously is some leaking through of information, and I mean we live in such a modern world that it's going to penetrate eventually, you'd like to think, and I would say that a good degree of the reason why there's been maybe there has been protest, obviously, but there hasn't been it hasn't been on an even bigger level, is because of just pure fear as opposed to lack of access to information. But you're right, there's absolutely a huge amount of censorship going on, and one of those ways might be through sport and trying to get those messages through. So yeah, it'll be like it's the Klitschko stories. It's going to be absolutely. It is fascinating. It's incredible what they're doing, and all the sports people who've returned to their country.
Every minute counts. We can't wait for conventions at the end of the month. There's no place in international sport for a nation whose leaders have chosen the path of war and threatened the world with nuclear weapons. So that's Vladimir Klitschko giving interviews. It's an exclusive. It's in the Mirror, I think. It's also in one of the other papers this morning. You can read it if you get your hands on it. The rest of it is really, the mundane rest of the world is going on about our business. Winning at Twickenham is never easy. Even if Ireland are excellent, it will still be close. That's Gordon Darcy. Sexton signs a new deal and confirms he will retire after the World Cup. So he said he's already planning for life after rugby. His brother is working with the Ireland under-20s. So I don't know if there's a life after rugby which is somehow involved with coaching. He said no to that in the past, but he also had said in the past that he would be interested in it, so I'm not sure what that is. Inter the last 8. Liverpool 0, Inter Milan 1 last night. We're not alone. Iron Kyiv is the two Klitschkos standing in front of graffiti. That is the back of the Star this morning. We've already talked about the Chelsea takeover as one of the main stories in the front of the Telegraph. Out on a high. Sexton signs up for shot at World Cup redemption. Pau's warning, we don't want to sit back, Sweden will push us back. That is Vera Pau talking about the Republic of Ireland versus Sweden. And also Phil Mickelson must explain his comments. That's the head of this. The Jay Monaghan State of the Nation is out. And Dublin need a reset to improve, says John O'Leary. Relegation from Division 1 may be the reset the current team need before launching a bid for All-Ireland glory. I don't think relegation is going to be too big a deal. If they get relegated, it doesn't matter.
You think?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
I think that they'll probably go down and just kind of rebound in a way that Mayo did last season. Obviously Mayo with a lot of new players, and that young group of players probably benefited quite a bit from finding their feet in competitive senior football last year in Division 2. So is there going to be a similar tranche of new Dublin players who benefit from it? Possibly. There's also this situation where we don't know what version of Dublin we're going to see this summer as well, and maybe the 5 or 6 more players will come back and prove to us that we've read too much into this thing in the first place, and that truly would render this relegation story completely meaningless.
Okay, let's move to a totally different story. We're going to a gym on the West Bank in Palestine, and I'm delighted to say Anla O'Carrollon is with us this morning. Anla, good morning to you.
Lads, how are you? It's good to join us again.
Yeah, last time we were talking to you, you were getting equipment into Palestine. As far as I know now, the equipment is in, the classes are up and running, and the gym is fully functional.
Last time we were talking, nearly exactly 2 years ago, actually, and we had just opened the gym. But the last time, I think we were chatting just before we left the last time, which was right before the whole kind of pandemic kind of reached us in all its seriousness. So that's been a pretty hectic 2 years. Like, there's been a lot of changes, obviously all over the world, but specifically, there's been a lot of changes in Palestine. We've progressed a lot with the whole gym project, and there's been a lot of changes here in the Laji Centre where I'm sitting now, which is the community centre in the Ida refugee camp in Bethlehem, where the gym is located.
What kind of changes?
Well, first and foremost, my friend who kind of like came up with the idea about the gym in the first place, with Salah Jarma, just pictured right behind me there, passed away very suddenly last April. So there's been loads of changes from that perspective and from an organisation point of view. And like, Salah was a real leader and a revolutionary, like, in terms of how he was perceived in the community and the work that he did over the years. So the crew here at the Laji Centre really have had to kind of, it's tough going when you lose a leader like that, and to kind of regroup and decide that, right, if we're going to make this a success, I wonder if we're going to honour Salah's legacy, then we're going to have to get the shoulder to the wheel and really kind of up the ante with all the projects. And as soon as we came over here this time, you could feel that energy straight away. People, like, they're obviously still miss him very much and think about him all the time, and they're kind of channeling in many ways that energy into the various projects that they have here at the Laji Centre. Like, the gym is just one of the projects. The centre here has been on the go for something like 20 years, and they've got an environmental unit that tests the water quality and that grows vegetables on the garden. They've got a women's unit, a community health workers unit. They just opened a kindergarten during the pandemic, which was only just an old disused storeroom the last time we were here, the same kind of room that we had to build the gym in. So it's just absolutely amazing, all the work that people have done over here, and we're very glad to be a part of it. So that's one kind of aspect of the change. But like, since we've been here, it's been a really hectic couple of weeks. There's been regular clashes with the Israeli army who's surround the whole camp here. Like, the camp has got something like 5,500 people living in it in a 3/4 of a square kilometre area. It's surrounded by the apartheid wall and army watchtowers, and also access points for the army to come in. Like, we were on the roof only here a couple of days when tear gas started landing on the roof. There's been young fellas shot with these rubber-coated metal bullets for being on the street. A young fella got lifted from his bed at 3 o'clock in the morning the other night by like 30 or 40 soldiers. Came into the camp fully armed with a jeep in the middle of the night, went to this young fella's home, got him out of bed, put a blindfold on him, and frog marched him out of the camp. Just there, 2 days ago, there was a 12-year-old on the street, and the soldiers laid a trap for him, hid behind a wall, drove into the camp, let off a smoke bomb. The soldiers were in the jeep, jumped out of the camp, and they hid behind the wall until they seen the kid. Kid was just unfortunate enough just to not know that the soldiers were hiding behind the wall, and they grabbed him, took him away. That's the way the life is over here. Like, it's just such a contrast. Like, the thing, I suppose, that I'm keen to kind of talk about when people ask me about the gym project and the Laji Centre and the different work here is that every project that, including the gym, that is the Laji Centre have here, it's a form of resistance in the way that, like, the other day, the army were in here with their weapons loaded, firing countless numbers of tear gas canisters in and around the camp and in and around the centre here. And it was 4 or 5 of the young girls, young women, in having a music lesson with one of our crew, Shiva, who was over. And that's the kind of contrast that is just a kind of a constant kind of a constant presence in life over here when you've got these attacks by the army, and you've got the things that are going on in the Laji Centre here as well, as various kind of forms of kind of resistance. I think that's a really important point maybe to get across.
So trying to go about music, trying to go about physical activity in the gym, it's very difficult to do that and to continue without what's going on in the background having a massive impact. But for you guys, or for whoever is actually taking those classes, there is some kind of minor release, a momentary sense of normality or escapism.
It's not just escapism, it's active resistance. Like they're actively, this is what people are doing over here to try and kind of stand up to the soldiers and to the level of oppression that goes on here. You see, just as an example, like you may be able to hear a bit of work going on in the background there, but there's a roof garden here that the Laddie Centre opened up a number of years ago. It's feeding like over 100 families. They've got a sort of like a water system that waters the plants, and it's kind of a big polytunnel. And just right before we arrived here, there a couple of weeks ago, the soldiers fired so much tear gas in, went through the polytunnel, destroyed all of the crops. Like there's no justification for it. There's no way you can say that, oh well, something must have happened, blah blah blah. It's just downright oppression and everything like that the Israeli kind of army and the authorities can throw at the people around here. It's to make life difficult as possible, and the resistance then is in rebuilding as soon as that happens. Right now, like at this very minute, they're building a cage over the polytunnel to protect it from the tear gas. There's a similar kind of a net over the five-a-side court just outside the centre. And so, yeah, I suppose there's the two sides of it. There is the like space and resources and the freedom to take part in things like that, in cultural things and in things that have got to do with health and all are very limited over here. So there is that aspect of trying to help with that and to be able to provide that kind of thing. But it's also much deeper than that when you put it in the context of what's happening around the place here.
Yeah, we're just looking at some pictures that you have. There's climbing ropes, there's a climbing wall, there's a space for a class in the gym that you built. The struggle to get the equipment in, that was a real thing as well when we were talking to you the last time. So obviously you managed to get enough in to be able to begin the process of having an active working gym.
Yeah, we've got the gym that we have in Cork that's been open since 2013. There's basically everything that we have in Cork is here as well, and we're waiting on another delivery of gear to arrive today. And it's just that's all thanks to just the hard work of the crew that we're a part of here, and also the very generous support that we've received from like hundreds of people. We've got a GoFundMe campaign. It's called the Aclai Palestine Project, and there's been nearly 600 people have donated to that, and that's not including the people who give us supported us just by giving us kind of money to come over with and things like that outside of the campaign. So it's been really amazing to get the support from people. I suppose like one thing that's kind of struck me on this trip out here is that there have been a lot of clashes and a lot of attacks by the army in and around the camp, and anyone who's following our Instagram page, it's at Aclai_Palestine, will see some of that footage. Like we've had more messages, people saying, oh, fair play to you for documenting this, lads, and well done, and you are doing great work. But like for us, like it's only a teensy thing for us to do that in relation to what people actually go through here on a daily basis. So while we're really appreciative of the messages of support towards our crew, what I would really encourage people to do is to get behind the project by chipping into the GoFundMe. And there's a lot of people have been asking how they can get involved in things in Palestine, and the Laddie Centre here have got a summer camp that's running from the 1st to the 14th of August. And that's a like really, really good way to come and learn like from just the people here and go and visit different organisations and get a real feel for what's happening on the ground. So yeah, but otherwise, other than that, like the gym is going really well. Like there's kindergarten class in this morning, there was a women's class in this morning, there's going to be another session on later on in the day, a circus class for the older kids, and it's really great to be a part of it. It's brilliant to be back here after such a long time and to be able to just stay for a little bit longer and just get stuck in and be a part of the team here.
On the summer camp, are you saying they're actually actively looking for volunteers to go over?
Yes, the summer camp that runs in the Laddie Centre here is open to people to apply for it. They can go to the Laddie Centre's website. We'll post the link to the summer camp in our Instagram bio as well if people want to check it out that way. But the real value of coming over to the summer camp is you get to do something useful, like kind of help with the work around the Laddie Centre. You get to go around to different groups and learn what's happening in Palestine. And for like my sense for people that are over here, that's a big part of the kind of support that the Palestinians needed. They needed people to come over from Ireland and different places, see what's happening, learn about it from them, and then go back. and share the stories. Like, that's what we're doing. That's why we're spending so much time sharing things on social media. Is we want people to see what's happening over here. And we're just very fortunate that we have got such a, like, our crew that run this project, the Irish crew, like a small crew. Like, we've got Patter, who's out taking drone footage as part of the film that we're making about the project. Shiva Brock was over, who's a singer, released a single. Shiva released her last single, Creva, while we were here, and just outside the window here, there was jeeps outside, tear gas was flying, the place was on fire, people were getting shot, and she was over here doing the music classes. Sally McMonigal was over, organised a collection of digital cameras to bring over, and she was running photography classes for the kids and going into the camp and kind of helping to develop those skills. And she's the one who's been taking the majority of the photographs that people will see on the Instagram account. But I think that that's a real testament to how much the crew that we're a part of believe in what we're doing here, and the opportunity is there for people to do that as well, to like come over and learn, and then see where you might be able to apply your skills and then to do something useful. Because at the end of the day, like, sharing things on social media and saying well done and all, it's good to get the support, but what people in Palestine need is for us, people in Ireland, to take some kind of action and do something. And we all have our own kind of particular skill set. So that's really what it comes down to, really, I think, is not to do things with the eye of like, through the lens of charity, but to do things through the lens of solidarity. And at the end of the day, that's what this project is all about. It's just about being here and being a part of the crew here and doing whatever we can to help with the work that's going on here already.
Yeah, well, it's obviously a great job. It's working out for you guys, and I think you're doing a great job in telling people that story, and it's a great line that it is about solidarity, not charity. And so if anybody wants to get involved, they can donate to the GoFundMe, and on the Instagram page is where the link for if they want to apply for the summer school. Is that the best place to send people?
Yeah, they can check out the Lodgy Centre's Instagram as well. It's just at Lodgy Centre. The Lodgy Centre have a website, and we'll put the link to the summer camp into the bio of our Instagram account as well.
All right. Anla, great to talk to you again. Thanks a million for making the time for us.
Les, thanks very much. All the best.
No worries. That's Anla Carolan, the Aclai gym in the Lodgy Centre in a refugee camp in Bethlehem, as we heard there, and it's definitely worth checking out if you're interested. And you might be available in the summer, then I'm sure that would be a life-changing experience for many people. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's coming up between now and 7 o'clock this evening on OTB Sports Radio, which you can get on the OTB Sports app. At 1 o'clock, it's OTB Gold, Sonia O'Sullivan. The Koi Gig Pod from 3. Our retro panel is How to Fail Better, very Beckettian. OTB Gold is Manu Petit at 6 o'clock, and OTB Tonight live with Joe from 7. Up next, we're talking Champions League with Graham Hunter. Keep an eye on the ads for Ruth Fahey and Karen Duggan on the latest episode of the Koi Gig podcast. Niamh Fahey was this week's special guest.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The greatest league in the world is back.
Every Friday night after the League of Ireland games, a place for you to come to give your opinion to Vane. There's a little button down in the left-hand corner where you can say that you want to talk. And Johnny, you're just going to have to mute yourself because you're ruining it for everybody.
I can't. I'm still ruining it, am I?
You are, yes.
We're going to talk about Waterford FC now. Let's change to the real first division now.
For immediate reaction from around the grounds, catch League of Ireland late night, Friday nights at 10 on Twitter Spaces. Follow at Off the Ball.
Do you think there's an age where you need to choose? Would you encourage multi-sports as long as possible, or what's your view on it now, all these years later?
Yeah, I suppose for me personally, all I can speak of is my experience, and I think it's benefited me. So obviously, I think definitely there's an age that you need to choose. You need to solely focus on one, and for me, that came when I started getting picked for the Irish international team and was making that step up to senior. Maybe nowadays you probably have to make that step or decision a little bit sooner, but I was fortunate enough to have really understanding managers on the international setup and also the Galway team, but I would be of the mantra that the more sports you play, the more diverse skill set you pick up, and therefore the better all-round athlete you become. And it's also more stimulating for the person. For me, I think if I had just solely focused on one sport, yeah, if that's your complete passion, then fair enough, you do that. But I also had a passion for Gaelic football. So the way that took me, I think I was able to maximise the best of abilities in all-round athlete and as an all-round sports person.
With prices from only €289 for fully comprehensive car insurance, everyone's making the jump to getsetgo.ie. New business policies only. Prices subject to minimum premiums. T's and C's apply. MCL Insurance Services Limited Trading is getsetgo.ie is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, you're very welcome back. Time for us to turn our attention to the Champions League. It is the second leg of Real Madrid and Paris Saint-Germain. I'm delighted to say Graham Hunter is with us. Graham, good morning to you.
Hi, lads.
These football matches that we've been seeing over the last couple of years with these super teams is as good as football has ever been. I mean, I know I'm a prisoner of the moment, but am I right in saying that? It feels that way.
I think that you can begin to construct a pound for pound argument on what you've said. So, for example, the two ties where Paris Saint-Germain eliminated Bayern Munich the other season were sensational. I think it depends how far back you want to go because, for example, we've got tonight Leo Messi back here in the Champions League anthem in the Bernabeu for the first time since 2011. Those two semi-finals, I'm not sure if Barcelona and Real Madrid constitute the super clubs that you're talking about. Maybe you're beginning to talk about, the way in which City and Chelsea and Paris Saint-Germain have been constructed. I don't know. You pay your money, you take your pick. But those two semi-finals were absolutely extraordinary. And in terms of the Paris Saint-Germain-Manchester City tie, Paris Saint-Germain, I'm certain that'll be last season on the route to City turning up in the final and losing to Chelsea. I don't think we saw the absolute best of Paris Saint-Germain. And that's one of the things that I think we'll see tonight. Paris Saint-Germain embarrassed themselves for the second time this season against Nice at the weekend. But if you look at the side, some key players have been given a rest for today. Donnarumma's back in goals. You have to be careful how you flavour, a broth like this by saying it's all about the subplots. So Neymar and Messi against Real Madrid, Messi back at the Bernabeu, Mbappe playing against the club that still remain favourites to sign. All these things add to the story once the actors really claim the stage, and you can preview it. But on the night, it's going to be about speed of thought and how well, in microseconds, the slower team, which is Real Madrid, physically the slower team, and probably in terms of speed of thought, still the slightly slower team, how well they make microsecond decisions. And this is the possibility of being an epic tie in the genre, in the bracket that you talked about. And I go there tonight, pretty sure that Madrid are second favourites, not just in the tie, but on the night. Also pretty sure that it's Madrid, it's the Bernabeu. They can do it.
What's interesting, in this whole kind of element of Mbappe and his potential relationship, his potential future relationship with Real Madrid, is the slight twist, certainly to my eyes, earlier this week when David Ornstein reported that Real Madrid also wants Erling Haaland on top of Kylian Mbappe. Obviously, you'd have your Tebas coming out a couple of weeks ago saying it'd be great to have one in Barcelona, one in Real Madrid, and Real Madrid said it maybe, or they don't say, but it's been suggested that maybe they'll wait till Benzema is gone before bringing Haaland in. So does that actually make this a far from credible situation that'll actually transpire in reality?
No, I mean, listen, I don't know what language I can use on your breakfast show there, Owen, but, bollocks to David Ornstein. We've talked about that on this show weeks and weeks and weeks ago, simply because it's an absolute stated, clear wish of Florentino Perez to sign them both. That's not a new piece of reporting. It's not a new idea. This is a man who grew up with Puskás and Di Stefano and Trento up front, watching that team, being beguiled by that team. This is a man who came to power in 2000 with the Figo deal, going the Galactico era. The Galactico idea is back, signed so many Galacticos that he ran out of Galacticos and signed Michael Owen instead, which didn't work. That wasn't quite as acidic as it sounded. But he did literally ran out of Galacticos. Now there's a really clear situation, which is either Haaland and Mbappe, who will both move, I think. You know, Paris Saint-Germain are doing the most extraordinary, how would you call it, financial gymnastics to try and find a way to keep Mbappe. But I find it hard to believe that League One is going to satisfy him. I find it hard to believe that with the whole world queuing up for these two players, Mbappe chooses to stay at Paris Saint-Germain. I don't see that. Haaland is clearly set on leaving Dortmund. And therefore, there are two scenarios. One, some lucky team puts the two of them together at centre forward and at left-sided attack coming in. And everybody else, in theory, if there's a good team behind them, should just sort of settle for second place, I think, over the coming years. Or Florentino Perez fails in that idea, because I don't think there's anybody else who has the idea to unite the two of them, or the resources to unite the two of them. Chelsea clearly spectacularly dropped out of any race recently. And if they're at two different clubs, then what you've got in marketing terms is a new Cristiano Leo Messi. Look at the two greats, but also the two guys are so different in attitude, in playing style. And, you know, what I get the impression is that Haaland is dithering over the idea of, do I want to oppose Mbappe? Do I want to be part of an idea whereby the money at the two clubs that he gets, I get, is pretty similar? You know, I get super wealthy. The resources behind us, it's in any one of 3 or 4 different clubs. There's only 4 clubs in the race, I think. You know, in ascending order: Bayern Munich, Barcelona, and then at the top of the tree, Real Madrid and Manchester City. The playing resources are going to be even-ish until you come to Barcelona, where you have to take a leap of faith because it's not even at the moment. And therefore, you know, there is a scenario whereby Haaland and Mbappe are playing for Real Madrid next season. But there is also, and I think it's important to say, that the tom-tom drums coming out of Mbappe's fairly large entourage, an entourage that Pochettino was a little bit withering about yesterday in his press conference, and saying something I think is important, separating Mbappe, who's extremely bright, extremely achievement-oriented, not just money-oriented, extremely articulate, multilingual, separating out the entourage around him, which has gained quite a lot of ignominy over the last 18, 20 months. I think that one of the things that we're assured of now is that the debacle in Paris, you know, the absolutely stinking way in which Real Madrid played, didn't impress Mbappe. And those, Leonardo and also the owner Aclai at Paris Saint-Germain, who are trying to keep him, trying to retain him, trying to make him renew, said, is that what you want? Do you want to be playing at that, you know, pace? Look how, you know, low they played in the pitch. It's all speculative counter-attacks. They couldn't pass to one another. All of those criticisms of Real Madrid were completely legitimate. I can't remember if I've spoken to you two since that game, but Madrid were atrocious.
Yeah.
And they betrayed themselves.
So they will be expected to fight back tonight and put something different in. Like, is the manager going to change and ask them to go out and try and attack? The things have changed in Ancelotti, which is one of his many bountiful pluses as far as not just if you're a reporter, but if you play for him. He tells things as they are. He enjoys his work. He still treats it as a multimillionaire pastime rather than state secrets or NASA. And he was really frank after that game. He said, "I got the tactics wrong. We applied the tactics I chose badly. We let ourselves down. Real Madrid can't play like that." He didn't talk about the result, which was, a very late Mbappe winner. And they were going to get away for, burglary of the century. And since then, he's talked a lot about Pintus, his Italian fitness conditioner, having taken under his instructions, a really risky decision
which is to spend 2 weeks putting in really hard physical work, a top-up, which in mid-season can go badly wrong. You can suddenly get dozens of little muscle fatigue injuries if you do a mini boot camp in mid-season. But they have. Ancelotti has said significantly after the Paris match, we're going to play forward again. We're going to press. We're higher at the pitch. We're going to advance the back line. We're going to go back to what we were doing at the beginning of the season. We'd lost our way a little bit. So the answer to your question is yes. But Paris Saint-Germain know this, because he's been absolutely crystal clear about both aspects, where they play on the pitch and the degree of energy that they have to put into their pressing.
The other major subplot at the moment is about who the next Man United manager is going to be and whether or not Pochettino's in the frame for that, whether or not he wants it, whether or not they want him, all that kind of stuff that's going on. I'm very interested in your take on this, right? Because there's been a bubbling under. Anytime Paris Saint-Germain don't win games 4-0, I read these kind of crisis at Paris Saint-Germain, and then I check the table and I'm like, maybe I've got the wrong table here. Maybe there's like an alternative reality where the Ligue 1 table actually has them, neck and neck with Paris, with Nice, or a couple of points behind. But like the league is over, and it's been over for months. So those results don't actually matter a huge amount when it comes to assessing whether or not Pochettino is a very good manager. But there's definitely a campaign from I don't know what's driving the campaign to go, Pochettino's not good enough for the Man United job. He's not qualified for the Man United job. He's failing in Paris. And I don't really see the evidence for that.
Jerry, there's a complicated Molotov cocktail you've thrown at me there, because number one, and this is again the reason that for 20 years now I've enjoyed coming on and talking to you, is that there are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers, so many media that couldn't tell their backside from their elbow, and so many media that are now including, the climate outside, by which they mean social media, says, so that there's a lot of horse, written, spoken. One thing that I think I'm arguing can be differentiated from that is that around Paris Saint-Germain, particularly from the owner, but also the media that report on them, there's an expectation that they can be like Bayern at their best, and they're not. So Bayern at their best rip domestic teams, and I'm talking over my lifetime, reach points where they're utterly nationally dominant, which Paris Saint-Germain aren't. They weren't even champions last season. The gap at the top is good, but knocked out of the cup in a pretty paltry 8-stone weakling way. They lost to Nice again at the weekend, which they shouldn't be doing. And the dissatisfaction that I think you're detecting that does not reflect on this Poch, a good coach or not a good coach, is about, we want to be behemoths. We want to be the Bismarck. We want to smash rivals, and they aren't. You're right, I think, to differentiate. It's a slightly dysfunctional club. I think Pochettino had no voice in how the team was assembled last summer. And I told you that I interviewed him as the Messi deal was going through. I was talking to him. He was enthusiastic about it. He was bewildered about how he was going to manage to get all the unit parts of the force to blend together, to self-sacrifice. He was unsure about whether the front three would do any of the work that he likes a front three to do, other than be brilliant and score goals when they're all fit. So he has it sounds counterintuitive, but when you're given charge of a club like that and you're not given charge of the recruitment and you're dumped a Harlem Globetrotters side, then whether you're a good coach or not, and he is, occasionally the side will play like the Harlem Globetrotters, and they might entertain or they might not have the day. And occasionally the bell will ring and you'll be like, oh, look at that. And that might be tonight.
Is it better for, say there's a group of Manchester United who do want Pochettino, is it better for them if he loses and goes out early, or if he actually wins the tournament and thinks he can ride off into the sunset?
I think either way, he has an argument about going to his employers and saying, I want to leave. You win the trophy and you probably get a walking pass if you request it. You go out having had the chance to put a cricket score at Parc des Princes. You're out of the cup and the league's a procession from now to May. then I think he's gone. But I think we can be crystal clear about the fact that as it stands right now, Pochettino doesn't want to be Paris Saint-Germain coach next season. The conditions aren't right. He's not particularly enjoying himself. Now, that doesn't mean that if he's got an analytic, and I am not telling you that I know what he thinks about Manchester United. I'm not saying that. But if he has an analytical eye, there are similarities about the way that Manchester United is run on a day-to-day basis that might make me think, fire, frying pan. So I don't know if he gets that. And to be honest with you, there's another scenario, which is if Paris Saint-Germain cut loose tonight and really put this tie away, if they do, which they did at Camp Nou last season, and won by 3, then I think Ancelotti, having been booked by Florentino Perez 3 weeks ago, we'll see a second yellow and won't be there, and Pochettino will take over this summer. And from my analytical eye, the best scenario for Pochettino is to be Madrid coach from this summer.
It is definitely a better job than the Manchester United job at the moment, and it's not even close.
That's right, because the squad is very good. It's been reasonably well constructed. The stadium is just about finished. It's paid for. You're working in an environment where, in terms of team completion, particularly if Mbappe is added, there's not masses of work to be done. It's a country whereby he functions probably much more easily than working in French. It's a club that he aspires to work at. It's a club that tried to get him when he renewed his contract at Spurs. And Zidane walked out after the Liverpool Champions League final. And Pochettino was told directly by Jose Angel Sanchez, the vice president, if you had a get-out clause at Spurs, if you built that into your contract, you would be, this summer, you'd already be Madrid manager. So there's a feeling of a circle being complete. There would be a feeling of, because none of this is outright fact. But if you want to game it, if you want to hypothesize, knowing what Florentino Perez is like, Ancelotti has his, not quite his back against the ropes, but another display like Parc des Princes, and he won't be the coach next season. And Pochettino feels, to my mind, to be an old desire, which football often tries to fulfill. Often, there's a big pattern of that. And secondly, probably the right guy.
That is really interesting, because it certainly adds another layer of subtext to everything that's happening tonight. It sounds like you think they probably will open up tonight, that they are the class of this field this evening, and that Paris Saint-Germain are going to go through. I
think they should have won by 3 or 4 in the first leg. It's a slightly different Madrid, but there's no Mondi. That's crucial. Mondi at left back, in terms of physical power, aerial power, the way in which he links with Vinicius down the left touchline, his speed, his ability to combat the speed that we're likely to see from Mbappe, Neymar, Messi. Speed of decision making in Messi's case rather than speed of sprint. No Casemiro. Casemiro hasn't had a vintage couple of months, but he was brilliant the last time they played, sort of like 5-6 brutal games in 18 days, and they won them all. He's out, suspended. His street smarts, his height, power, just experience that both of them are missing, and that Kroos is a fitness test today. And also one of your slower footballers, brilliant on the ball. But if he's run past, if he's jostled and bullied, Dutch referee, if you forgive my little joke, is going to occupy the Mickelson position, and he's permissive. He allows teams to play Northern European football. That doesn't suit Real Madrid at all. It's the case that I'm just going to say it. There are certain clubs and certain grounds where ridiculous things happen. This is Madrid. They think the trophy belongs to them. It's the Bernabeu. They're going to be, if they don't concede early, the roar, the noise will give wings to the players. But if you sat down and looked at this match in an actuarial way, Paris Saint-Germain win tonight and go through. The beauty of football, and the reason we spent so much time talking about it is, well, who knows?
That's why we play the games. Graham, great stuff. Thanks a million. Enjoy it.
Lads.
Graham Hunter there giving us some thoughts about many different aspects of tonight's game. We hope that has suitably whet your appetite. If you want to get in touch with us, you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream, and you really should subscribe to Off the Ball our YouTube channel. You just hit the subscribe button. All right, tomorrow morning, Ronan O'Gara live in studio as we look ahead as well to the weekend's Gaelic football, the Champions League reaction, and much more as well. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. I should have mentioned a little bit earlier on that the latest episode of the Koi Gig Pod is available right now to listen to. We heard Ruth Fahy talking with Ruth and Karen this week talking with Niamh Fahy, the Liverpool captain. That is all brought to you by Cadbury, official snack partner to the Republic of Ireland women's football team. And you can get Koi Gig wherever you get your podcasts. Now, some Brian O'Driscoll in conversation with John Malloy.
We're delighted to announce the Ireland captain Johnny Sexton signed a contract extension up until the end of World Cup 2023, after which he'll sail off into the sunset after lifting the Webb Ellis Cup. I've added on a touch there to the statement. Johnny Sexton then speaking, Brian O'Driscoll, you're very welcome, to the press said he's delighted, he's going to attack the last 18 months, and that's his plan. So he's going out at the top, as he said himself.
Yeah, like, listen, there's no huge surprise, is there? But
no.
The only thing is, and I was thinking about this when I read it, and I, you know, I know from my own experience that as soon as you give the finality, you think you're doing one thing of kind of releasing the pressure valve of the questions, but actually it encourages something else that you can't control.
Did you have a drawn out goodbye?
I was like, there was a game or two that, you know, so
yeah,
it was like, I look back on that now and I thought I was buying myself a bit of breathing space, but on the contrary, it actually ended up being that everything became a last time in Franklin's Gardens in like December, Twickenham.
Yeah.
And then actually, as it transpired for me, I ended up, I don't know, I think I broke the world record, the cap record at the George Gregan in like my fourth last test. And so they all just were kind of landmark moments, and I was dying inside.
Why?
Because I just wanted it. By the end, it was that the whole one more year and the long goodbye, and I'd had too much of it. I was embarrassed by it by the end.
Okay, so it wasn't that it emotionally drained you?
No, not that. I like a little bit of me was ready to retire because I knew I was ready to fall off a cliff performance wise.
Mm-hmm.
But that a lot coupled with the for God's sake, you know. You're not gone already. And I sensed that myself. And you think you're a good judge of the kind of situation you're living in. You'd like to think so. And I was dying a little bit inside.
Yes. I mean, I understood your logic at the time, because it ends the endless questions of, will this be your last year? Will this be your last year? And as you say, it transforms that into, my God, how are you feeling? It's the last time.
You're better off keeping them guessing, keep going, yeah, well, maybe we'll see. I'll decide closer to the time. Just better off kicking it down the road. It's harder for Johnny because he's going to be 38.
Yeah.
And he's like, the only thing is, like, if Tom Brady and others are able to get to 40 and 41, like, you know, why cap it? Anyway, the only thing is there's no place, it's different. There's no place for him in either Leinster or Ireland after the next World Cup. That's the only thing. Where, you know, in other sports, it works differently with franchises and so on, teams built around you and whatnot. They've got to plan for the future, and you can't go season by season as they do a little bit more in maybe American sports.
Well, as you say, it's no surprise. And you know what, as well, it's worth just stating, not to labour the point, but in spite of the general improvement in Ireland that we have seen, this Six Nations has once again underlined Sexton's importance. Even against Italy, the difference when he came on versus the previous 60, everything just looked better, smoother, more fluid.
Sure, Joey had just softened them up in the first 55, 60 minutes. For you know, people say they were Joey detractors in some shape or form. It's clear as day, you know, what he does add. And it's funny, I've watched a lot of footage this week because we're doing a piece at the weekend with ITV on Marcus Smith versus Johnny Sexton, and both of them understand space. They really do. But Johnny's understanding is pure experience, whereas Marcus gets it, but he's got this incredible athletic prowess that gets him out of trouble that wouldn't allow other players to be able to survive. And also he backs himself so much. If in doubt, he'll back himself. Whereas Johnny's now really using his intellect. He's an inferior athlete to Marcus Smith and inferior to many other 10s, but still very capable. If you offer him a gap, he'll still go through it. So it's his passing game and his vision and his ability to attract defenders and then pick the right option is the real differentiator between another player of 37 or 38 and him, and that's why he's still our number one.
Yeah. And
we'll be saying that for another 15 months, so people need to
precisely, yeah. And the way you say it's experience. I presume though there is a gifted, innate ability there. Or like at 25, I presume he was still ahead of the pack in terms of appreciation of space and pictures.
Yeah, and finding that pass and picking it. But he's playing a game plan that allows him to do that really well. He's very comfortable. I think the pre-season that he got when he didn't go on the Lions tour worked so well in his favour because he was able to embed himself with non-international players in that pre-season, so players of a lesser calibre. And so he really had to work hard, bringing them along with him. I think the 5-week period where Leinster didn't have a game in December worked a treat, where they were able to drill down their plays. And the reality is, it's a very, very close version of what Leinster are doing with Ireland. So he's comfortable. He's practiced it for the last 3 or 4 years and honed and developed and evolved it. And he's been a big part of that process. But he's totally comfortable with the shape of what they're trying to create and then picking those relevant options depending on what the defence is showing him. I would say his peripheral vision is a massive distinction as well. I think that above Carberry, above others, whatever about his ability, his know-how, his ability to be able to scan and read the defence and see where the wingers are in particular and when they're playing in. There was once or twice where Carberry threw a pass out the back where the winger shot in, where Joey, passes the screen player running short, the back out the back, but he actually misses both of them over the top because he sees the winger shooting in. It's all to do with shoulder and hip shape and how aggressive they're coming. And Johnny's able to see that hundredths of a second quicker than I don't know if there's anybody else. I don't think there's anyone that sees it as clearly as that, to be honest with you.
Your cohesion point brings us to Eddie Jones, which is very much the talk of the week. Ireland are literally, and I say this without hesitation, the most cohesive side in the world. Bulk of their team train together for the bulk of the year, so they're very well coordinated in their attack, very structured, very sequenced in set plays. I think that was a genuinely meant point. He did have a subtle dig, is maybe the unfair way of putting it, but he did say with a view to the World Cup, we're in a great place. The 3 months before the World Cup is where every team becomes equal. We all have the same amount of time to practice. We all have the players the same amount of time. And so what he's talking about here is Stuart Lancaster effectively at Leinster is running international camp. They're perfecting these plays day in, day out. And you struck me as a perfect person to talk to about this because you have come from Leinster, bulk supplier to the national team, playing with Leo Cullen probably since school. You knew what he was going to do before he was going to do it, I'd say, on a pitch. And you've experienced how much of an advantage that might be. And then you've also pitched up in a Lions tour where we're starting from zero and we have to get to cohesive very, very quickly. So your thoughts on Jones's points there?
Yeah, I think I'm always mindful that there's an undertone in everything that he says, but I do feel as though I agree with a lot of what he is saying. I think if you look at certain teams around World Cup time that ordinarily wouldn't have had a huge amount of time together, and Argentina are a prime example. World Cups in 99, 07 in particular. In 03 we scraped by them. They were still a good team, could have beaten us. So but they would always have struggled from a cohesion point of view because they wouldn't have spent that much time in training camp. You put them together for 2 or 3 months and you drill them like a proper pre-season. It's actually the longest pre-season any team's ever going to get. And all of a sudden, he's right. You get an opportunity to do exactly what you are trying to do. And I think if you look over the course of the Six Nations from an English point of view, I thought they were very disjointed against Scotland. I thought shape was very poor, very unsure as to what they were trying to achieve, and progressively I think that's gotten much better. Right. Some good signs of it in the first half against Wales. They didn't have an awful lot of possession. In the second half they kicked a lot of it away, but I thought some of it was really good, and they had their lines of running. They're doing a very similar model to what Ireland are doing. Right. You're still seeing that pod up front, with one inside, one outside, player out the back. And then there's always a modification on what happens outside that. Different teams are doing different things. But if you'll see at the weekend, and what's really interesting, and we might go on to it, is seeing some of the two of the best ball players are the tight head props in both teams. Both of them have run that pod the best. Okay. And to watch the silky skills of both Sinclair and Furlong carry the same way, read the defence well, very, very smart footballers. So you'll see them in at that first distributor, and when it does go out the back, there, like I said, there are variations, and I do think that Johnny squares around the corner better than Marcus Smith. Smith buys time and does square up, but he not to the same degree, and I just think that that's an experience thing. I think he's a young guy still, and when he learns what space he can create out wide from those small little nuances, I think he'll be a fabulous player.
And you were on so many Lions tours, say, by comparison with Leinster and Ireland and cohesiveness. Did you generally get to a point on Lions tours where come the first or second test you looked around and you said, I feel like we know each other as well and we know what we're doing as well as an international side I've played with? Yeah, I think the difference with Lions tours is that everyone gets it within 3-4 sessions. Because the calibre? Yeah. Okay. It's just the standard. Okay. The standard of training is different level. Okay. Completely different level. Where you don't have many guys that aren't very good at almost everything. And those that aren't stand out like sore thumbs, and the cream does rise to the top in those sessions, where you also have to play probably a relatively simplistic game plan, and the evolution of that, certainly under Gats, was working hard around the corner, and then they obviously changed it up a little bit in 17, and wasn't much fun watching this time round. But for before that, the ones that I was involved in, it was big conversation. It was like having a clear idea in week one. This is the way we got to play. We're going to outwork the opposition, and we're going to be grafters, and then we're going to leave ourselves an opportunity for a bit of X factor to showcase what they're capable of doing. Okay, makes sense, I suppose. And were there certain players that you click with straight away? Yeah, there are. I think you probably get that more on game day, and you really understand what someone's made of. But yeah, there are players where I thought I clicked pretty well with Manu Tuilagi, and I thought he was my chance of playing in the Test series in 13, just because of the balance to his game. And sometimes you need, when I was the younger guy, I was the listener, and then sometimes you need that dynamic, a bit of experience and a bit of youthful exuberance. And then in later tours, Manu and maybe I was the experienced guy, and same with Jamie Roberts. That was my third tour, his first in 09. So he kind of came in and listened a lot to what we were trying to do. And I think you're passing on IP as well. You're passing on knowledge as to why things work and breaking things down rather than just running through plays for the sake of it. It's also, the game is a very different place than it is now. I think players have a very distinct understanding of what their role is. I think back then sometimes they were told to do something, and even at Lions standard, but you didn't break down why you were trying to do it. And until you understand exactly your role, how can you be certain that you're actually achieving what you're trying to achieve to stop the opposition? The senior partner in on-field relationship is an interesting point, because I guess you wouldn't want two alphas who are competing with each other the whole time. And no, I said we're going to do it that way. No, well, we're doing it my way. Well, it would have been really interesting what would have happened in 01. Now, I was still young, but I don't know if I would have been able to play my game the way I wanted to if Will Greenwood was playing at 12. He was more of a 13. I think you would have been trying to do a hybrid 12-13 between the two of us. And from his perspective, he was
got injured, a week or two before the first test, 10 days before the first test, and Hendo got in, and we formed a good partnership because we'd obviously played in Ireland together. But that was interesting. And then, similarly with Jonathan Davis in 2013, we're two 13s playing in the centre, pure 13s. Neither of us were 12s, and we tried to make it fit, and we just didn't quite gel. And you get that. That's the reality of it. But in the other ones, you look back, Jamie is the obvious one. Hendo, we worked really well in 01, Rob Henderson. And then, 05, right? I thought we were a solid partnership for the 45 seconds I was on the park for the first test with Johnny Wilkinson. So, I don't know, I can't, that's blurred out.
Yeah. Would have been interesting to see how that partnership would have done.
Yeah, to be honest with you, we were always going to be up against that, weren't we?
No, sure. But just your own little corner, how you might have done.
But we had obviously, playing Johnny as a left footer in the centre, Steve Jones, right footer, there was a huge focus on the back of what England had done in 03 with, Mike Catt coming on as a right footer in the centre and finishing games out and being that kicking option, Bolshaw at fullback, right footer, to complement Johnny's left. So it was a real kicking focus. So maybe not, what I was loving listening to, but you shut up and put up.
Yeah, no doubt. So Twickenham then, let's talk Twickenham. 04, 06, 10 is a nice sweet spot in your career, given that Ireland previously had won there in 94 and I think 82, and then suddenly, wow.
Ginger McLaughlin, was that 82?
Yeah. I don't have to double check, but it must have been because there weren't many others.
Yeah.
I looked, I think it was,
Okay.
So each ground has its own, I suppose, tradition and quirk and flavour. What's the Twickenham experience?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's so enormous. It's vast and not particularly intimate. There's an intimacy to Cardiff. I know you're talking probably 20-odd thousand less. That's why. But I think Twickenham, we had a couple of nightmares early on in 2000, 2002, where we got beaten by 40 or 50 points. So we knew what Swing Low, Sweet Chariot was about, with them head of steam and just unstoppable. So you have to play with a bit of fear in Twickenham for sure. You have to play and 04 was a real catalyst for that Irish team. It was their first game back after winning the World Cup. Obviously lots of changes, but for us to beat them against the odds there was huge for us, and I think that instilled a big amount of confidence. And then the fact that it wasn't a fluke in 2 years later when we're back there again, I think we're kind of reinforced that we were a half decent team. Not many sides go to Twickenham and win. I just remember it being somewhere where you had to, a bit like the French in Stade de France in the early 2000s. Hang in there, strap yourself in and survive the first 15, 20 minutes, because we chased shadows before and it could be a long, long day at the office.
And is it loud with the atmosphere?
It is loud, but certainly not one of the louder ones. Okay. It doesn't. It wasn't that. It was the ferocity of the team, and you have to remember, going back to those early years, pre-World Cup win, they were an outstanding team. They should have won multiple Grand Slams and fell at the final hurdle. So this is a very, very impressive English team we're looking at. Less so the years that we then subsequently went on to beat them. And then, they're, no matter what, even when it's a poor England team or a disappointing or a subpar England team, there's still a tough beat there, you know? They really are.
Well, in 10 years, 2 Six Nations defeats there at home.
Wow.
Ireland Grand Slam in 2018. Scots last year, that's it.
And that was as comprehensive a win. However well we did to beat England in 04, 06 and 10, I'm thinking they were all one-score games, maybe 5-6 points in one of them, but would have been the biggest margin. But we won really well, very comprehensively in 2018, and that was that was a surprise. It just never felt that, irrespective of any English team that come up, to try and play against a team looking for a Grand Slam at home, they're not going to lie down. And I was really surprised that day that we got the better of them as convincingly as we did. But then, since then, shows the cycle of the game. We've been thumped by England a few times, and they've really physically imposed themselves and kind of made apparent our Achilles heel of this not being able to deal with the high levels of physicality that the best teams in the world are able to do.
Well, I want to ask you about that. So I guess that 1920 period was where and it paralleled with Saracens. It felt like, geez, Irish teams against these English teams physically can't compete.
But it was two teams.
I know, yeah.
There was no other side. If you look at at all other sides in England, none of the provincial teams would have struggled consecutively like Leinster did with Sarries. Yeah. And it's just two big games, and Sarries are a great team.
No, 100%. So I wanted to ask, where are we now? Because there is no doubt England almost being talked about as underdogs for this game at home. And by the way, if they lose this and then go to Paris, they could be looking at 5th place again. They're going to try and make this physically, I would think, a real war for starters. So physically, do they have an edge on Ireland still?
Do you know what? Much less so. The thing is, and I'd be mindful of the terminology I use here, but I think if you look at the great England team of the World Cup's semi-final and subsequent final loss, particularly, and the team that built up, you have to remember as well, in 16-17 they won Slam and Championship, and then obviously a disappointing year in 18, but for 19 they were able to bounce back within that year and come back and deliver a team that got to a World Cup final. But if you look at the personnel there, it just felt a team more capable of physically dominating teams consistently. Mm-hmm. I just don't know if there's not that strength and depth. Everyone's a little bit older now. You look at George Cruz versus Ewells in the second row. Ewells, I know, is a bit of enforcer for Bath, but just don't think he has the same nastiness, same know-how. Guys like Will Stewart coming in at tight head, again bench, guys that very, very good club players, but I just don't think they're top internationals. Where before, England of 2-3 years ago, there was 11, 12 really, really top internationals within their team. Okay. And then, the supplementaries were workhorses and kind of added value to their team. So I just don't think it has the same look of an English team as one that used to scare us a few years ago. But that's not to say that they don't have the ability still to come out. And I'm not saying they're going to blow us away, but I think we've got to be very mindful of what is coming, and it's going to be that attempt to physically dominate us and push us around. And on paper, do we look a little bit light in the second row in Tyburn and James Ryan? Probably, comparatively to Ewells and Itoje. Will they be trying to outmuscle them and be nasty? Yeah, they will. So it's a big moment for this team to see how they deal with that level of aggression that's coming at them.
And would you be tempted to bring Ian Henderson back in, who played 80 minutes on Friday?
I would be. I think he does add something to us. I don't know at whose expense. It's very difficult to drop Tyburn at the moment. But I don't know who's number one anymore. Lineouts obviously is a very important factor as well, and who's calling it and who's marshalling things. And
where are you in this?
Particularly if Peter O'Mahony's not going to be playing.
Where are you in this move, Byrne to 6?
Yeah. I think that's there's definitely something in it. We don't want to just think about the defensive side of things. You do need a ball carrying 6. So is it Doris goes to 8? You miss that bit of size with Conan. How good was he against England in the Aviva last year? That performance got him selected for the Lions. So I'd be conscious of maybe not changing that too much. So I think they will stick with the same back row of Conan, Doris and Van der Fleer, but which of the second rows drops to the bench if you bring Henderson in? I don't know. Possibly James Ryan.
And Does Conway go back into the right wing, or does Hansen start if we're assuming Lowe starts?
I think Conway probably does go back in because he was the guy in possession, and unless they've seen something at training where Hansen's just ripping him up and one-on-one, he's shown that, you know, that he has the better of him. But, you know, Conway has been there for lots of big ones recently, hasn't let us down, scores tries, finishes very well, makes very few errors, good in the air, all the things you want in an international winger. I think he's super solid, but then has, you know, sparks of X factor too. So I think they're all close calls. I do. I think you know, we're not even talking about Keith Earls anymore, you know. So, and guys like Stockdale sitting on the injured list, it's a great place that they're in. That there's so many selection headaches. But I do think that if you are picking from a full deck, I think Conway does go back in there, and I think Lowe probably plays on the other wing for now.
I've seen the suggestion made, if England are now going with, say, 2 ball-playing centres, that perfect opportunity to put Bundyaki in there and, say, bash on through them and bash away for the full 80 and leave Henshaw out, which seems...
Yeah, you know, unfortunately for Robbie, you know, the game wasn't his greatest game against Italy. You know, you try to think of opportunities created, not a huge amount, you know.
Weird game.
It was a weird game. It was a weird game. And you know what? When you watch it back, they were so close to, like, killing them 3 or 4 more times. Okay. And I do think that if you have Johnny in there, that you pick the pass more often, and you're around the corner with 3 numbers on one winger chasing across, not even a full back anymore. Like, it was that glaringly obvious. So yeah, it's unfortunate because the problem is he was given the opportunity. He's still number 1. I do think that Henshaw is still number 1 in Farrell's eyes. I think he feels as though he will pick the pass and pick the option more often than Bundy. Bundy will give you security. He will give you advantage line. And he will, you know, still very proficient passing wise and everything. But I think those clutch moments of getting someone to make a decision with hundredths of a second, I think there's a greater backing for Robbie still, that he's the one that's going to be able to pick the correct option more often than Bundy.
Okay.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.